Three, two, one. We've done it. Here we are. We're streaming. We're doing it. We hit the thing. We did the buttons. We hit the whistles. We do the stuff. Once again, also streaming on TikTok. TikTok's fussy, man. What a fussy butt little program, dude. Like, honestly, literally, it's like in and out with like, is the face thing real? Is the thing? Oh my god, who fucking knows what's going on? I went and got a haircut. You can tell. Look at it. Look how beautiful I look. Yeah, isn't it nice? Isn't it nice? I got the fucking haircut. I'm so beautiful now. Hope you're all doing well out there. Had a day off, relaxed, chilled. Took a walk around my city. Right? Took a walk around some of the neighborhoods of my city. It's been a long time since I've gone down to the downtown of Toronto. Beautiful, beautiful place, beautiful thing, beautiful environment. Lovely to be there. Went through the day's news. I have up on the screen right now, right? China's deep space exploration plan for the next 10 years. You see, unlike us, unlike the people of the West, China likes to do things like plan, right? It likes to actually plan things and endeavor stuff and do things in the world, right? Like it doesn't just let the free market decide, right? Anemone, real pleasure to see you, Anemone. Just for those watching in TikTok, right? I don't respond to the TikTok chat. Come to YouTube. It's in the description. It's all right there. Bibbidi bobbidi. Broccoli cheddar rice. Yesterday's show was amazing. Yesterday's show was a fucking... What a chaos. What chaos, dude. I don't expect that energy to come from TikTok again. I feel like it was just like a perfect storm, right? It was just like a perfect moment. There was this fellow who committed suicide. Ronnie Nutt is his name. He committed suicide on stream, right? And a lot of people brigaded me because I was streaming basically right after that happened, right? Fart Sniffer, do you know what a color revolution is? Yeah. Yeah. Like, we had a lot of, but at the same time, like I think there was a success story there, and I am going to be continuing to stream with TikTok, right? Because I think it does drive people to the chat, and I think that there were a lot of well-meaning people who came and talked to me in the chat. It was a real pleasure to talk to some of those people, and I think that there is a genuine interest that's happened. So, Anemone, what I have started to do is stream on TikTok simultaneously. So I've got TikTok set up just off screen here. And that allows people, Milo, dude, you got to leave right now, eh? You got to get out of here like right now. You can't just like, anyway. I've got a little pug here at the same time, everybody. So I got a little pug walking around, and he has to be fussy right away because he's like, "Who's John talking to? Who's John talking to? It must be me. It must be me. There's no one else here. It has to be me. I don't understand abstract technology. I'm a pug." And yeah, TikTok is the platform to stream on. Very good choice. Yeah, but I feel like the trouble and the reason why I'm ignoring the TikTok chat and I'm driving people towards YouTube is that TikTok chat's a disaster. Like it's a total fucking disaster. Like, and there's no reason to pretend like it's anything else. Like right now I'm looking at it. What do we got? We just got basically a bunch of flowers, right? People just putting random flowers in the chat, right? Which is lovely. That's fine. That's great. Lots of flowers for people. I'm sure that has something to do with the Ronnie Nut thing. I'm absolutely positive. But I would prefer to interact with and chat with people who are actually interested in having a conversation, who are actually interested in asking questions, who are actually interested in contributing in a meaningful way, who are actually interested in doing, building something interesting, right? Like I find that the just stream of consciousness that happens in a lot of chats to be, I don't know what the word is. Just, I don't like it, right? I don't like it. Grinning, of course, putting a real pin in it. Public suicide under capitalism. I never thought that would happen. Yeah. Like, that's the way it works, man. Like, we've created a culture of abandonment. You know, people are just fending for themselves. Lots of good people are doing the best that they possibly can. The fellow who cut my hair today. I went and got a haircut today, as you can see. The beautiful new beard. Thank you so much. I'm so glorious. He was a fellow who immigrated from Iran very recently, right? And we got talking a little bit about his experience with Iran and all this. And of course, like I don't go deep in politics with normal people that I meet, especially people who are from like Iran. And of course, he's sitting there going like, yeah, the Iranian government, like we don't care for it. And I'm like, yeah, but I mean, like the United States is a piece of shit, right? Like the United States wants to overthrow that government and install its own government and coup it, right? That's the reason why there's a theocracy in Iran, right? Is that hey Nova Scotia, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. When you see a far right theocracy take over Iran, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's not because the Iranian people are evil. It's because at that moment in time, Iran needed to be run by highly militant people who are interested in maintaining the stability of the Iranian culture. And whether you like it or not, that's far-right theocrats, right? They're going to do that, right? They're going to be highly militant, and they're going to maintain the culture of Iran. And of course, there's going to be negative aspects to that, of course. But one of the negative aspects certainly isn't allowing the United States government to coup them, right? And so now there's a new and interesting moment happening where there's protests happening. Garv, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. There's protests happening in Iran now. And I think those protests are legitimate. Like, certainly the CIA is looking at those protests going, how do we take control of this? How do we turn this into a color revolution? I think that's certainly the case. But at the same time, I think you would be doing yourself and the Iranian people a disservice if you didn't say, yeah, the Iranians definitely want to overthrow this theocratic government, and I think they want to return to a secular society. I think, and certainly the theocrats are not interested in relinquishing power. So it's very complex, and Iran is a very complex and interesting situation, and the fact that they have managed to withstand the assaults of the U.S. empire when through like the last 20 years, through the moment when the United States empire was most heavily focused on the Middle East, is a real testament to the strength of the Iranian people, to the organizational power of their government and their ruling class. But now the people, I think, want to change. Michael Jordan, no, bro, you're wrong. Like, sorry, dude. Like, with all due respect, you're a 6-time championship basketball winner. Absolutely. The United States is 100% an empire, bud. Like, by any definition you want to put on the table. Like, just, I don't even know what to tell you, dude. Like, the United States is not an empire? Okay, let's just look at a map, right? Let's just look at, like, a normal map, okay? So, here's the United States, right? So, the United States throughout like the 60s and 70s, essentially couped all of South America, right? Pinochet was, his economic advisor literally was Milton Friedman. The neoliberal period goes throughout South America. Like, this literally turns, and there was a lot of that even happening before that period of time. Like, Teddy Roosevelt, for God's sakes, was overthrowing governments and installing corporations all throughout here, right? So you essentially have like vassal states owned by the United States and their corporations all throughout South America. The slave trade in Africa, dude, like come on, man. Like, come on, man. Like, all of Africa. The United States has couped 5 African governments this year, right? This year. Like, this year. 5 governments throughout Africa have been couped. Like, what happened throughout the Middle East? Like, that's empire building. That's because of the empire. And Europe is essentially just, and Canada, are essentially just vassals of this organization. Like, by any definition you want to put in front of me. Like, what's your definition of empire? Write out your definition of empire in the chat. The United States is 100%. Like, and at this point, dude, and I'm really trying to not offend you. Like, I'm really trying to not offend you by saying this, but it's obvious. Like, it's obvious at this point that if you're standing there saying the United States is not an empire, then I have to tell you that you don't know what you're talking about. Oh yeah, the destruction of Liberia. Yeah, but I thought you were saying Libya. Like the destruction of Libya. Like Libya was 100% done because the United States was afraid that the system of Libya that the system that Gaddafi was putting into Libya might spread, right? That it might spread into Algeria, Niger, Chad, the Sudan, and worst of all into Egypt, right? Worst of all into Egypt. That the United States has huge strategic interest in keeping control of Egypt because it maintains control of the Suez Canal, and of course it rudders right up against Israel. A successful imperialist state currently seeking out imperialism. So a successful imperialist state, now I would say that the United States is a successful imperialist state, right? Literally committed a genocide to steal all the land against all the First Nations people who lived there while enacting literal slavery, like the worst form of slavery that can exist, right? That there are many forms of slavery, but certainly the worst one is literally I own you and have the right to even kill you and defeat you and destroy you, right? So certainly an imperial state with no doubt. And then seeking out imperialism. Like, dude, what do you think's happening in the Middle East? Like, what do you think that is? Like, you think the United States is like what do you think they're doing there? For real. Like, what do you think they're actually doing there? Like, they're in Afghanistan, they're in Iraq, they're in Somalia, they're in Syria, they're like they're in Egypt. Like, what, they're in Iraq. Like, why? To steal the resources that are there. Like, that's what they're doing there. And of course, there is an argument to be said that they're there to destroy this so that it can't be developed, right? That they're there to destroy Afghanistan and Iraq and all these places so that China and Russia can't develop them, right? That's a thought that was articulated in the grand chess game, right? Which is here, we'll just Google this, the grand chess game. Oh, chessboard, my mistake. Right? One of the major works of Zbigniew Brzezinski, right? He's a graduated PhD from Harvard, but it's a book that talks about what the strategy should be for the United States in the Middle East. And the Cliff's note of it is basically that the United States should try to destroy this as much as possible and take as many resources as they can so that China and Russia don't have the opportunity to develop it. That the strategy was never to actually create these as vassal territories or anything like that. It was never to actually own them properly and to vassalize them properly. It was always to just destroy them, which they've done a great job of it. And I mean, the dollar hegemony, yeah, absolutely. The Marshall Islands, Pax Americana, only a hegemony could get away with invading, yeah. You can deny anything being imperialist when you don't know what the word means, yeah. Do you think Russia is an empire? No. Like, when Russia gets into wars, they have been, especially in the post-Soviet period, or not the post-Soviet period, because you still have the invasion of Afghanistan, which is like the stupidest war maybe in the history of humanity. Like, why the fuck did Khrushchev and all these guys even involve themselves in this? It was so stupid. But like, Russia is largely, their wars have been border scuffles, right? Like, the current war that's going on is literally a border scuffle because the United States couped the Ukrainian government in 2014. Installed literal like Nazi leadership. The Ukrainians they allowed elections to continue, which was, they had to allow elections to continue or else NATO wouldn't actually say that Ukraine was a valid country. Zelensky wins the elections with the promise of ending the Donbass war, because after the 2014 coup, the Nazis go down to the Donbass region, right over here, right, and start shelling Russians there. Ethnic Russians. They start shelling the shit out of them. You can see all this in Oliver Stone has a documentary called Ukraine on Fire, right? Just Google Ukraine on Fire. It's free on the internet. You can watch it. Oliver Stone goes through all of this. Like, the only reason you don't know about it is because the U.S. empire doesn't talk about it, right? Like, that's it. You don't know about the 2014 coup. You don't know about the Donbass war, right? You don't know about any of that. The Russians do. Like, they know all about that because it was happening on their border, right? And they view that as an existential threat. They view that as a problem. They think that it's a problem that the United States is funding Nazi organizations like the Azov Battalion. They think it's a problem that the Azov Battalion is committing massacres in, like, Mariupol. They think that it's a problem, right? That the Russians have a big, long history with Nazis, right? And they don't like that there's a Nazi regime rising in Ukraine right now. Like, when Zelensky bans all left-wing parties, including the opposition party, from running, while there are literally 2 seats occupied by a Nazi party, doesn't take a genius to figure out which way this is going to go, right? Doesn't take a genius to figure out which way this is going to go. And when the people of Ukraine elected Zelensky, they elected him on a platform of end the Donbass war. That's why Zelensky won the election. And he actually, to his credit, attempted to do so. He actually went to the front line of the Donbass and said, let's pull this back, let's go. And the Nazis said, fuck you. That at the end of the day, the Nazis there don't answer to Zelensky. They don't give a shit about Zelensky, right? They answer to NATO, and NATO's the one that's funding them. So doesn't take a genius to figure this all out, but nobody knows about it, right? And so when we start talking about Russia as an empire, it's like, well, Russia's goal isn't to be an imperial power and take over places and all this kind of stuff. Russia's goal is to make sure that they don't get blown up by the United States. And that's basically the United States' goal at this point. Like, Michael, I'm going to be as blunt as I possibly can with you about my perspective on what the United States is in the world, right? The United States are the Nazis in the world today. And it's not close, right? It's not close. That the United States is going around the world enslaving and destroying everything they touch on purpose by policy. That they're not being secretive about it. Vaughn, good to see you, bud. Jeremy, good to see you. Major, good to see you. Real good to see you, Major. Hope you're doing well out there, bud. Nice new icon, bud. The Americans are literally, involved in massive coups, massive wars, massive efforts. They're openly talking about going to war with China. They're openly talking about war with Russia. Like, at this stage in the game, the only rational position left is to say that the United States is the Nazis. Like, they're fucking everybody up. And the idea that we're going to look at places like Russia and China and be like, how dare they fight back? Which is essentially the position of the West. That when Russia and China actually build a military force and actually say we're not going to allow the United States to destroy us, we essentially say, how dare we fight back? Like, these places have a right to exist and the right to want to live in peace. And them fighting back against the United States empire is not itself imperialism, right? That let's say America didn't exist and Russia was expanding into the Middle East and then yes, right? But that's not what's happening, right? Like, I find oftentimes there's like an imagined, well, the Russians would act this way and the Chinese would act this way if we weren't checking them. It's like, well, I mean, if aliens showed up, everything would be completely different, right? Like, so it's all nice to create a fantasy narrative, but we got to live in a reality, and reality shows you pretty bluntly that the United States is very obviously the aggressor nation, very obviously the imperial power, and very obviously like equivalent to the Nazis on the world stage. It's and again, like I just think it takes somebody to stand up and point it out, right? Like in the story, The Emperor's New Clothes, right? The way the story goes is that a bunch of guys convince the emperor that they've created invisible clothing that only the pure-hearted can see, right? And so, but what they have is nothing. But nobody wants to admit it because then they would admit that they're not pure-hearted, right? Or in this case, loyal to the empire. So the king gallivants around naked, believing, trying to maintain this illusion that, oh, he actually is wearing this cloth that only the pure-hearted can see, but nobody is actually wearing, like, he's not wearing clothing and everybody knows it. And eventually somebody stands up and says, the king is naked. He's not wearing anything. And the illusion breaks in that moment. It's obvious. The United States are Nazis. You live in a Nazi empire. Like, that's, have you ever asked yourself, or has somebody ever asked you, what would you do in 1930s Germany while Hitler was on the rise? What would you do if you were living in an empire of the Nazis? How would you do? You play that kind of thought experiment, right? I've done that lots of times. Well, you know exactly what you'd do because you're currently doing it. Whatever you're currently doing is exactly what you would be doing because that's exactly what's happening. That your government has been taken over by corporate power structures. Those corporate power structures pay fealty completely to the military-industrial complex, that the goals of the military-industrial complex are to destroy everything around it and steal as many resources as it possibly can, including human beings. And it's just plainly the truth. And we're all supposed to pretend like this is normal and we live in a normal society that's full of normal people. Like, no, we don't. Like, we are the Nazis on the world stage. It almost a one-for-one parody at this point. I think the only difference is that the United States is actually more advanced than the Nazis were. Like, not just technologically, but in terms of their strategies and tactics. Like, Goebbels would love to have this propaganda system. Goebbels would love to have the CIA. Like, the CIA is the largest terrorist organization on the planet, and it's not close. Like, it's not close even a little bit. That the CIA makes Al-Qaeda look like baby's first attempt at terrorism. Like, we are overt totalitarian Nazis in the world. And to the rest of the world, like, we get our panties in a bunch about like which Republican Democrat. It doesn't fucking matter to most of the rest of the world. They don't give a shit if the missile coming at them has a little Black Lives Matter flag painted on it. Like, doesn't matter at all. As far as they're concerned, there is complete and total unity from party to party about how to act in the world. That missiles are coming no matter what. And places like China, places like Russia, they literally cannot afford to pretend otherwise. And so while we pretend as though, well, they're fighting back. Oh my goodness, how evil. They're sitting there being like, you guys are literally planning to destroy us. Like, it's clear as day. It's clear as day. The emperor has no clothes. The emperor has no clothes. It's very obvious. What are you guys talking about? What are you guys talking about? The United States is, as an umbrella term, really those in power over the U.S. system, not its uniformed citizens. Who is that versus the rest of the West? United States as an umbrella term, really those in power. I mean, yeah, the system of power no longer responds to the people. It's a feudal system that we've erected, really. I mean, people have called it, like, in techno-feudalism, inverted totalitarianism. That's a word that has been used by people like Sheldon Wolin. But the reality is that the system that we live under no longer responds to us. And that's just a hard truth. There's like literally a Princeton study that shows you pretty clearly, it came out in 2017, said outright that like elected officials no longer respond to the demands of the public. That what the public wants, the opposite is what happens. Because of the nature of the capitalist system. That there's a built-in antagonism. That what's good for the people is bad for the owners. And what's bad for the and what's good for the and what's good for the owners is bad for the people. By definition, structurally, it's not a moral commentary, right? It's the structure of the system, and we're seeing how it's failing, and it's failing very badly, and it's going to continue to fail. You got Middle East destabilization, very 1984. Yeah, the first U.S. killed 26 million Bengalis in the 70s. Yeah. Every time Europe has invaded Russia, though, Ukraine, Russia has lost 20 million people, yeah? I would say that's kind of an existential threat. Yeah, like this is something that I think the West is completely disrespecting about this narrative of what's going on in Ukraine. Like, the Russians are looking at this being like 20 million people died to Nazis. Like, they are very serious about what's happening. Like, when when Putin did the mobilization, he did a mobilization of 300,000 people, right? It didn't happen without a certain degree of grumbling within Russia, but the Russians understood that it needed to happen, and the 300,000 men showed up, right? Like it's not like there was a massive coup that happened in Russia. It's not like the people stood up and are throwing a big tantrum about it. They see what's going on in Ukraine and they go, this is an enormous existential threat. Like literally our grandparents fought and died. 20 million of them died to Nazis. And now NATO is funding Nazis to destroy ethnic Russians within the border of Ukraine. Like, I genuinely say that if Putin did not mobilize the people and go to war against Ukraine, that he wouldn't have stayed in power for very long. That's the amount of public support that war actually had. That I don't think Putin had a choice. I think he was drawn to it. I mean, if it was up to Putin, like Putin doesn't want to fight wars. Like that's not what he's there for, right? If it was up to Putin, he'd be part of the European system. That's what he wanted. That's very clearly what he wanted. But everything he's doing now, he's doing just because he has to. He doesn't have a choice. The alternative is to literally let Russia be destroyed. And he doesn't want to be the leader in power while Russia gets completely destroyed. Like, that's exactly what would happen. Whoever's donating money to me, Ken, thank you, Ken, bud. I appreciate it, bud. Good opportunity to say like, share, subscribe, right? Like, give me those diamonds, I guess. Like, it's 5 cents. Consider donating a little bit of money, guys. Consider donating a little bit of money. It helps. It makes me feel good about myself, right? Yeah, BRICS, go BRICS. If you guys don't know about BRICS, right? If you guys are sitting there being like, what's BRICS? BRICS is the organization of China. It's an alliance between China, Russia, India, Brazil, and a lot of other nations. Saudi Arabia is starting to get involved in it in order to sidestep the International Monetary Fund and other international Western systems. It's the end of dollar hegemony. It's going to be a total disaster for America. A total fucking disaster. Fart Sniffer 78, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. Silly ass name. You came up on my For You page. Want to say hello? Love from South Africa. Fantastic, bud. Good to see you, bud. You keep smelling those farts. Hey, what are your thoughts on the looming railroad strike? Yeah, they should strike. Everybody should strike. We should all strike. We should be on strike, every single one of us. We should be organizing strikes. We should be organizing everything. Like the idea that the Coopy workers here in Toronto, in Ontario, like literally lowest paid Coopy workers to get 4.2% annual hike under tentative deal with Ontario. It's a joke, right? Inflation's 6%. So literally these guys are like, we're going to go on strike. No, we're not. Yes, we are. No, we're not. Yes, we are. No, we're not. And in the end, they're going to get less than inflation. They're literally going on strike for a pay cut. Like, that's how pathetic we are. That's really pathetic. That's a pathetic showing. Yeah, I doubt the U.S. Congress will allow a strike. I mean, yeah, like we're getting to the point now where if you start to strike, they'll just throw you in jail. Like that shit's going to start happening, guys. Just watch the UK for that. Michael Jordan, what's your opinion on Taiwan? I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes, bud, because I say this an awful lot. When Mao took over China, the ruling class of China was in Taiwan. The only reason Mao wasn't able to take over Taiwan, who are monarchs, right? Literally monarchs that allowed like Westerners to create an opioid epidemic to destroy China, the 100 years of humiliation, all that kind of stuff. The only reason they couldn't take Taiwan and thereby overthrow the ruling class completely, 100%, was because Truman put boats there, right? And they just didn't have the technology to be able to stop it. And that's basically been how it's been since now, from now until the end of time. That what the United States wants to do is they want to turn this into an unsinkable aircraft carrier so that they can terrorize China. That's what they want. The Chinese are literally going, that's not going to happen. That their position is that it's one country, two systems. That's what they call it. They think that Taiwan is part of China, and Taiwan is part of China. The international community, the UN, recognizes that. Even the United States has recognized that up until very, very recently. So this idea that Taiwan is its own independent nation and and should go independent and all this kind of stuff, is a joke, right? In a vacuum, sure. The United States wants to put nuclear bombs right here. That's what it wants to do. Remember when nuclear bombs were right here? Remember how big a crazy threat that was? Remember how that almost was like a nuclear Armageddon? Well, the United States wants to do that to China right here, right? Do you think it's reasonable? I don't. I super don't. And if the United States continues acting this way, and if Taiwan is stupid enough to keep going along with it, China's just going to take it over. It doesn't want to. It really would prefer. Like what China wants, right, is that China wants to send a delegation over to Taipei, right, go to the Palace of Taipei, sign a document saying Taiwan and China are unified, and have everybody go, isn't that lovely? And then they want to leave. That's what they want. That's obviously what they want, right? Why isn't that happening? Well, there's a big fucking United States empire right there that's literally building nuclear submarines in the East China Sea with the help of Australia. It's called AUKUS. Like they're literally here building nuclear submarines. Like if you had a neighbor that went and stood on your property line and stared at you, sharpening a knife every time you came in and out of your house, like, how'd you feel about that? Like, so if Taiwan is smart and, hold on, excuse me. If Taiwan is smart, and I think what happened when Pelosi showed up, like when Pelosi went to Taiwan, there was this big show of military force by China, and I think that scared the shit out of Taiwanese the Taiwanese rulers. I think that they really realized, and they're taking a look at what's going on in Ukraine. They're seeing what's happening. They understand that the United States is not going to back them. And China will absolutely destroy Taiwan, right? Absolutely. If it means keeping the Americans out, if it means that Taiwan does not get turned into an unsinkable aircraft carrier for the United States nuclear armament, they absolutely will level Taiwan to the ground. And the Taiwanese leadership knows it. So I think that they've been scared straight. I think that their ambitions to become a quote-unquote independent nation, as if such a thing is possible when you've got a literal United States empire marching around, I think that's going away. And I think China and Taiwan are basically going to be like, okay, bros, let's just chill out. Let's be buddies. Let's not fuck around with this. But that can change. That can change, right? So we'll see how it unfolds. My position is very simple. Taiwan is part of China, and China is part of Taiwan. Their history is intertwined with one another, and the only reason it's not like rubber stamp official is because of the United States. Major, in the Nazi times, I'd be getting euthanized for my disability. Yeah, that totally won't happen now. No, they'll just make things so bad that you have no alternative to do it to yourself. Right? That's the MAID program, the medically assisted dying program here in Canada. Yeah, if we won't give you enough resources to be able to survive, but boy howdy, we'll certainly let you euthanize yourself. Right? Yeah, holy crap, Ronnie McNutt. Yeah, that's your last one, Locomotion. If you keep up with that, I'll happily get rid of you, dude. I'm happy to get rid of you. I find that to be really disgraceful, honestly. Like childish and disgraceful. Hong Kong. Nah, I'm just happy to do this. Have some dignity, guys. Like, for real. Have some dignity. Thoughts on nuclear war? It would be bad. Yeah, it would be bad. Thoughts on nuclear war? It would be bad. Like, that's all. We don't need to go. We don't need to go too deep in that, Michael. I do think, just to ease your mind a little bit, Michael, I think a lot of the nuclear saber rattling is being done because it's useful for all parties. Right? It's useful for the Russians. It's useful for the Ukrainian leadership. It's useful for the Americans. It's useful for everybody to saber rattle about nuclear war. And the reason why is because it keeps everybody invested in the war. Right? That what, especially the Americans, like what the Americans don't want is they don't want the American citizens to be like, why are we giving money? Like, why are we still giving billions of dollars to Ukraine? Like, what is this for? What are we gaining? How are we actually moving forward? How are we winning this? And they don't want Americans to detach from it and then have it turn into something where they like have to withdraw from Ukraine and cede victory to Russia, even though that's an inevitability. Like it's so how do you keep people engaged? There are nukes. And it also works for the Russians, right? Like, we need to mobilize 300,000 people. This is a true existential threat. Oh my God, there's a huge thing. Nuclear bombs are in play, right? So it works for everybody. Works for Ukraine, right? Zelensky and the Nazis in Ukraine aren't interested in a ceasefire. They're not interested in a surrender, right? So how do they keep people invested? Nuclear bombs. So there's a lot of saber rattling going on about it. But if nukes start to fly, that's it. We're done. And I straight up mean this, by the way, right? If nuclear bombs start to fly, there are no laws. These borders are fake. You don't need to follow anything outside of like who has what weapons, right? Like there's no rules. You don't need to pay any attention to any of this outside of the threats that these people represent. Like, and that's the hard truth. Like if our civilizations and if our societies are not capable of protecting us from nuclear fucking war, then they're invalid. And you don't need to follow their laws. And we should be very open about saying that, right? We do not need to follow the laws of any country that is interested in actually engaging in nuclear war. You don't need to follow the laws of Voldemort. You don't need to follow the laws of Darth Vader. You don't need to follow the laws of like Prince John. Like, you don't need to follow the laws of evil, psychotic, nightmare creatures, right? You need to respect the laws that they pass for what they are, which is threats, right? But you don't need to abide by them as if you're morally obliged to follow the laws of your country, right? That's not real. And so that's the biggest reason why, like, outside of, hey, it would be a total, like, it would be the end of civilization in serious ways. Oh. Thanks, I am Dewey. Good to see you again, bud. These Ronnie jokes aren't funny, never were. Yeah, I find it to be disgraceful. It's just disgraceful. Good to see you, bud. I'm glad you're back. I'm facing possible eviction from my government-run apartment because I'm for a general revolt, not just a strike. Yeah. Yeah, my deep blue run city hates socialism. Yeah, because the Democratic Party is just as bought by the corporate power structure. El Morgs. What do you think of the fall in production as a lack of incentive to make more money in a communist society? I think that it's a myth made by capitalists. There's literally no evidence for it. That the Russian society was the most productive, like Russian communism was the most productive economy of that century. Like, and that's just true. Like, they literally industrialized an agrarian feudal society into the most powerful industrial power capable of defeating the Nazis in a single generation. Like, this mythical narrative that comes out of the mouth of capitalists is just CIA propaganda as far as I'm concerned. There's no fall in productivity. Like, if anything, it's the opposite. Because if you make a plan and you enact it, and if you have people doing the things they want to do, they work very hard at it. Right? That's the hard truth. Like, and this whole idea that like, oh, well, I'm not incentivized by money. People are incentivized by lots of different things. Money is actually one of the least incentivizing forces, right? Especially once you get enough of it. Once you have enough money to pay your rent and get your food and have your bills and get your fucking dumbass Bugatti or whatever, right? Money is no longer an incentive. People do things because they want to. And communist societies open up those opportunities to do the things that people want to do, right? It's how they got to space before anybody else. I genuinely don't know what you're talking about when you say that communist societies have a declining productivity. The communists, like literally the Soviets, communists, the people who were the first to embark on a communist project, were the first people into space. That they are the people who inspired the Americans to put a man on the moon, right? Like, I literally don't know what you're talking about. And that's just hard truth. That's just hard truth. I never learned your name, but wouldn't Big War kill everyone? Yep. Like, for sure. Yeah, 218 viewers on TikTok. Congrats. It's a crazy, like, I find TikTok to be just this, like, wheel of craziness. It's just absolutely, but I think people tune in to see what the hell the crazy guy is saying, and if they actually have a question to ask, they can come to the YouTube channel, right? And I think it's hi TikTok. I think that you guys are wonderful. Good opportunity to say that I love you Gen Z kids. You keep up the good work. Keep fighting the good fight. I mean, I'm of the opinion that we should all get rid of these nukes, right? Like, we should just get rid of nukes. And it's absurd that we have them. Like, it's absurd that we have them. Keep doing that, El Morgs. I'm fine with that. If you want a question asked, you just keep asking it. And that's fine. I get to it. I get to it. Like, I mean, China's deep space exploration plan is another great example. Like these guys are literally going to have moon bases soon. Like, they're doing, like, the plan for the next 10 to 15 years. Carry out Phase 4 lunar exploration mission, including lunar probes, around 2028 to complete construction of the basic structure for an international lunar research station, which will consist of lunar landers, rovers, and leapers, as well as an energy system, communications infrastructure, and life support systems. They're putting a moon base on the moon. Like, while we're sitting here jerking off about how do we get to Mars as if that's real, the Chinese are actually like, well, how do you get to Mars? Well, the first thing you should do is create a moon base. And what are they doing? Creating a fucking moon base, right? They're embarrassing us. Like, that's really the truth. Like, the Chinese are embarrassing us in this regard, just like communists always had, right? That the communists were the first into space, and so the Americans went, we should do that too, or else we're embarrassed. And so then they put a man on the moon and said, we won. As if that's it. Like, and that was it. They, like, put a man on the moon and then forgot about it. Anyway. Oh, I know, buddy. Oh, I know. What a cute little man you are. My little pug. My sweet little pug. Yeah, when people do things, create things because they want to, they enjoy it. Absolutely. What do I think about social democrats? The whole concept of social democracy doesn't work. Right, and it doesn't work for a very clear reason, which is that any gains that they actually make will be regressed by the system of capital. Social democracies only kind of work when there's a credible communist threat, because essentially what a social democracy is saying is, the capitalists will concede things, that the capitalists will willingly cede power to us. Right? And capitalists will never do that. Capitalists are narcissistic psychopaths to a man. They care about themselves exclusively, and they don't give a shit if you die in a hole. Right? And the only reason a capitalist will ever relinquish any of his power and actually concede anything is through if he feels threatened. That if you threaten to take away his power, if you threaten to take away the means of production, right? If you seize the means of production, then the capitalists will be like, oh, okay, whoa. And if there's a credible threat of that regard, then the capitalists will be like, oh, okay, don't seize the means of production, I'll give you health insurance. Oh, okay, don't seize the means of production, I'll give you employment insurance. Oh, okay, don't take away the means of production, I'll give you this. That's essentially what happens in the New Deal. That there was a credible threat of revolution that was happening, and so the capitalists started to cede power because they knew that if they didn't, people would just take away all their power. And that's essentially what happens in Finland and Norway, the Scandinavian countries. So we're all like, oh, the social democracies are so great. But the only reason they exist is because of the looming threat of communism that exists in the Soviet countries. And you can see those social democracies regressing already. You see it happening. And so the idea that we're going to vote in a social democracy is a joke. It's literally a joke. People like Bernie Sanders, AOC, may be well-meaning, but as far as I'm concerned, they're just characters in a WWE-style game. And their brand is just progressive social democracy. Not only do I not necessarily believe that they're genuine about what they say, that it's just cynical branding, not only do I not believe that, I don't think that they could. Even if they were to seize power, I don't think that they could do it. The oligarchs would never allow it, right? And even if they did manage to somehow get through the oligarchs, get through the CIA, get through all of that, and legislatively put in some kind of thing, 4 years later, those people are gone, the Republicans are in, and it's regressed. You can see that with Roe v. Wade, right? Roe v. Wade. Exactly the story we're talking about. The quote-unquote democracy, which it's not a democracy, but quote-unquote democracy that exists throughout the United States and Canada, exists to just funnel power out of the actual avenues of politicking, which is the streets, which is through legitimate forms of revolution, into dead ends, which is, you know, the legislature. That's basically what it's for. Like, the United States structure was designed by slavers to maintain slavery. That's what it was for. That the people who came over were kings and monarchs and barons and landholders, right? And explicitly wrote into the Constitution that power should stay within the wealth of the nation. Go read these documents. It's right fucking there, right? They structurally designed a system to make sure that only the rich could get power. And in Canada, like, the Canadian parliamentary system was designed by a literal queen, right? Literally monarchs designed it. And you think they designed it so that people could be heard? No. Like, the whole point of our electoral systems was just so that we could elect the people to tell us what the queen said. Like, that's literally how our systems actually work. And we expect these systems to respond to what we have to say. Get the fuck out of here. They're never gonna, that's never gonna happen. And if it does happen for like a little flash in the pan moment, it'll be regressed. That's how the system works, which is why I'm a fucking communist and I think the system's a failure, because it is, overtly. Yeah, make no mistake, socialism didn't develop at a peaceful vacuum. It developed under the pressures of an extremely capable and hostile capitalist force. Exactly, Cotton. Good to see you, by the way, bud. People have been making things for thousands of years before money existed. Yeah, since the fall of the USSR, Russia has not experienced any financial growth past the couple decades. Yeah, like right when the Soviet Union collapsed, a lot of these nations, like Ukraine, is actually the key example. Right, that post the Soviet period, the Ukrainian economy cratered. Before the Ukrainian war, the West was very upfront about how Ukraine was the most corrupt country on the continent. Right, like you get paper after paper writing about it. Now, of course, Ukraine is this bastion of democracy or whatever, but it's total fucking bullshit. And then right above it, you have Belarus. And when the Soviet Union collapsed, Belarus separated itself politically and became an independent force, but maintained all of its communist policies, and its economy has done very well during this period of time, right? So, like, you have this very clear example of two nations post-Soviet, post-USSR, one that maintained its ties to the old guard, Lukashenko, old communist guard, right? Maintained communist policies, maintained state control, economy stable, continuing on, the planned economy doing very well. And right below it, neoliberalism, a laissez-faire economy, total fucking collapse. Now it's like we are literally one election away. I am of the opinion that the guy that comes right after Zelensky is going to be straight up Nazi salutes. Like, straight up. That before all is said and done in what is happening in Ukraine, we are going to see Nazi salutes in the Ukrainian parliament. Like, that's what's going to happen in Ukraine. And when it happens, and when it becomes obvious, people in the West are going to be like, how could this possibly have happened? And they're going to be all confused about it if they even talk about it. Right? And meanwhile, I'm going to be sitting here being like, what the fuck? You literally funded the Nazis. You integrated them not only into the military, but into the parliamentary system. And then you banned all the leftists. What the fuck did you think would happen? Internationally, not producing the most useless consumer items is a good idea, not bad. Yeah. Opinion on Gurren Lagann? I don't know who that is, so I can't have an opinion. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to. I hope I didn't break your heart. Money incentivizes people to make pink razors and ballpoint pens, not true innovation. Yeah, exactly. Or like, you know, like that's why we've had big innovations in hair dye, right? Like, hair dye has had huge innovations. Like 20 years ago, hair dye was like this enormous, difficult procedure, but now you've got hair dye that's like nanobot technology that gets to the roots and your hair stays red and you can actually change it just by thinking about it. Like, we're not there yet, but you know, superficially we make really big advancements, but we're not making advancements in ways that actually matter, right? From Time Magazine, here's a headline from Time Magazine. It's now 40% more expensive to be single and dating than it was a decade ago, right? So literally newspapers and magazines at the heart of the imperial core are now being like, yep, it's collapsing, right? And they're being very overt about it because it's obvious now. Like, it's obvious. Like, 10 years ago, within my lifetime, it's not even a generation, right? It was 40% less expensive to be single. Like, come on. Like, come on. I cannot believe people are still walking around jerking off for capitalism when literally within the space of our lives, prices have gone up fucking 40%. Like, shut up. Like, Jesus. Hi, back from yesterday. Good to see you, not Zaniel. Got 28 people now. John's blowing up. John's blowing up. You see the world today. Yep. I'm planning on buying a piano tomorrow, so I'm hoping that I can actually get a piano here, and I'll like tinkle away on the piano while I talk. Thanks, not Zaniel. I appreciate that, bud. Now, a lovely Iranian man gave me this haircut, and so I'm very happy with it. Yeah, good to see everyone. I saw some of the TikTok stuff yesterday. It was great. Yeah, I think the TikTok idea is a good idea. I think it's going to drive a lot of people. I can see that the chat on TikTok is absolutely absurd, which is the way it goes on TikTok, I suppose. But I prefer to keep this nice and curated, and I think that's where... So if you're on TikTok and you actually want to ask me some questions, and you actually want me to respond to the things that you're saying... Link in the description. You can come over to YouTube and have a conversation with me, and I'll engage with you. And I also have like articles and things on the screen. I show things. Like, share, subscribe. Give the diamonds, all that fucking shit. I don't know. Give me money. Give me fucking money. I wish I didn't have to ask for the money. Honestly, I hate that. The amount of copyright-free works and volunteer effort in the U.S. shows enough will be done. People do not need to worry about production shortages. I mean. Think about all of the productivity that we simply don't pay for. Think of all the work that simply we don't pay for. Like, you think mothers get paid? Like, you think, like, if you actually paid mothers to be mothers, it'd be like a $10 trillion economy, right? But we just don't pay them. And then we wonder why aren't anybody having any kids? So it's probably because you're fucking putting them under... Draz Slime, I love this. Dude, if we lived under communism and socialism and you talked about how bad it was, you'd go to prison. There's no freedom. LMAO. Stop listening to the CIA, dude. Like, that's just, like, real, like, low-level CIA bullshit right there. Straight up. Like, low-level. Low-hanging fruit. Like, yeah, people could be critical of what's going on in the Soviet Union. Like, there are critics. Like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Like, it's just, and oftentimes people are like, whoa, what, the Soviet Union had gulags. You mean for the fucking Nazis? Or assassins? Like you're literally wandering into Nazi talking points, dude. Not even CIA talking points, like straight up Nazi talking points. Like, oh, the gulags are so bad. Yeah, for the fucking Nazis. Absolutely for the Nazis. Like, are you sure you want to be defending this position? I think you lose, bud. I think you lose real bad. And I think it's pretty embarrassing for you, frankly. Vaughn says, it was iron sharpening iron with the Soviet Union, but look where we are now without them. Yeah, sad we starved the Soviet Union. I think, like, I do think that, like, there is this sort of idea that happened throughout the post-Soviet period where I think the Russians thought that they would be able to integrate with NATO and integrate with the EU. Like, and that's dead now. And it's actually a very exciting time to be in Russia. Like, once this whole thing with Ukraine settles and BRICS starts to solid up and all this kind of stuff, like, it'll be very interesting to see what happens post-Putin. I think that's the thing to look to. Like, what does Russia look like after Putin? Who's the leader of Russia after Putin? What happens in Russia after Putin? Especially, like, now that the dream of integrating with the West is dead. And that's a story I never hear told in the West. That it's very obvious that Putin, that Khrushchev, Yeltsin, Gorbachev, Brezhnev, all these guys, Putin, all wanted to integrate with Europe and the West. That they took a look at the communist project and said, okay, like, this is causing us problems in regards to integrating with the European nations and the West and America. So we're going to get away from it, and we're going to become neoliberal capitalists, which will help us integrate into their system. And if I don't want to demonize these men, and I want to actually look at them and say, like, okay, like, they obviously think that what they're doing is for the benefit of the country that they're ruling. I think that the legitimate argument to make would be that they're interested in peace. That Russia is a place that constantly gets invaded. Like, constantly gets invaded. Not just by the Nazis, but well before. Always, over and over and over again. And so if they can get integrated into the European system, into NATO, become allies with America, right? That's peace building. That's peace building for sure. And it isn't until 2010, when Russia is rejected from NATO, that I think Putin and the Russians generally finally recognized and realized that they will never be part of the European system. That the Europeans and the Americans will never allow it. That they'll never allow it. Which I think is a real shame. I think it's a real shame. A neoliberal capitalist Russia at peace with Europe and America is better than a communist Russia at war with Europe and America. Like, I genuinely believe that. And so I think it's a real shame, and I think it really shows you the short-sightedness and the xenophobia, frankly, of Europe and the Americans, that they couldn't make this happen. The Russians wanted it. They were pushing for it. They kept trying to make it happen, and literally they were told no. And the only reason I can think of for why is because we don't want those dirty orcs here. That's it. Anemone says, we're in an era of overproduction. We have enough for everyone. Scarcity is a myth. Absolutely. Yeah, right. Guys, I know what the flowers mean, okay? Don't... fucking grow up. Oh, you've got some rifles from the Soviet Union. Good for you, Vaughn. Interesting. Have you watched Gurren Lagann, though? I don't know who that is, dude. At this point, I assume this is some Nazi shit. Dude, if we didn't have nukes, invasions would be more likely. That's just as bad. I mean, we would definitely be invading more people. That's certainly the truth. Oh yeah, China has found helium-3 on the moon and wishes to set up a base to mine it for energy use on Earth. Interesting. Helium-3, eh? I don't know enough about helium-3, but that's interesting. I really gotta say, I hope that we do not mine the moon. Like, we rely on the moon. The moon is responsible for affecting tides. If we start mining the moon, I think that we're really getting into territory that we don't really understand. Right? Cool Guy 2 ASUM says you should interact with TikTok Tag. No. That's fine. This is enough. This is good. I can moderate this pretty successfully. Like, if you want to come and talk and have an adult conversation, you can come and do it on YouTube. You do realize that communist regimes don't have freedom, right? Like, okay, define this, bud. What's freedom? Freedom. Okay. Freedom to do what? Freedom to own slaves? Like, freedom for what? If they had freedom, like, freedom for what? Freedom to sell themselves to a corporation? Freedom to be picked up by the police and be put into the largest prison system that exists in the world, which is the American system today? Like, what's this freedom thing you're talking about? Like, freedom to do what? Freedom for what? This sounds like some real libertarian, like, far-right nonsense, dude. Like, freedom to be unemployed and uneducated, living in a shithole? Like, freedom to choose between Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk as your owner? Like, what's this quote-unquote freedom you're talking about? What do you know about Hasanabe or Vosh, if you know them? Hasanabe, I think, is okay. I wish that he was being more... I wish he was directing people into the streets more. I wish he was more active. I think that he's building a business, not a movement, and I think he sees himself that way. Vosh is a CIA asset. He's even admitted it. So I think that if you're listening to Vosh, you're just allowing yourself to be duped by the CIA. Like, I think he's well read, and I think he understands the theory enough to be able to pretend as though he's smart. But he's essentially a liberal imperialist who is in the pocket of the CIA. So I don't think you should take him very seriously. Thoughts on Kanye? I think that Kanye has a mental illness. Morgs, thanks for your previous answer. One other question. What are your opinions of a laissez-faire government versus a totalitarian government? I mean, like a fascist government? Is that what we're talking about? Like when you say a totalitarian government, what do you actually mean? Like, are you talking about communist governments, or are you talking about actual totalitarian governments like fascist governments? I think fascism is bad, right? And that's what I hear when I hear totalitarian. Like, I think, like, let's round up the Jews, let's create purges. Like, to me, that's totalitarian, right? Like Hitler, Mussolini, right? People like Pinochet. Those are the totalitarians. And, like, yeah, obviously a laissez-faire government would be better than that. Have you seen Claymore? Haven't seen Claymore yet. Shit's fire. Who are the Major? This what's going on with this flower head explosion thing is that yesterday was the first day that I went did a TikTok stream. Which, hello TikTok, how are you? I'm glad to be here. That very day, a fellow by the name of Ronnie Nuts committed suicide on stream. And this is the emoji pattern that these people are using in order to make light and make fun of the fact that this man committed suicide. I think it's disgraceful. I think it's disgusting. I ban people for using it. I didn't understand what I was looking at when it was happening at first, but now I completely do. I think it's about as gross as it gets. Like these people are children. They definitely need to grow up. And I don't mean like they're grown people who are being disrespectful. I think they're literally kids. Like, I think that we're looking at 12-year-olds who don't really understand what they're doing. And I hope they grow up, frankly. And it's a big reason why I don't interact with the TikTok stream. I'm like, look at this. If I lean over and look, what do I got? Just like, yeah, guy with a bunch of those emojis. Yeah, guys, I think I'm 12 then. Yeah, just head explosion. More of this shit. Yeah, just more garbage. Right? I'm 17 and, right, yep, rip Robbie McNutt. Like, who... Like, I think it's ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous. Buddy, what are your thoughts on freedom? Countries running under communism tend to lack freedom. I mean, again, like, freedom to do what? Right? Like, I would describe freedom as being able to have food and shelter and then operate and interact with the world free from that form of desperation. Right? That, to me, that's freedom. That I find that the libertarian version of freedom is basically just telling you, oh, you're free to sell yourself to whichever owner you'd like. And that's what's meant by libertarian freedom. I don't consider that to be freedom, right? I don't consider the freedom to be illiterate and choose my master or choose homelessness to be any freedom worth defending. That what the communist societies brought was a removal of homelessness, a more educated and literate populace, an attempt to civilize the societies and industrialize the societies. And those, to me, that's far more free, right? That's far more free. Like, the type of freedom that you're defending is literally the freedom to choose, like, whether or not you have salt and vinegar chips or dill pickle chips. Like, the most insignificant versions, or the most sort of petty versions of what freedom represents. That communist countries build foundations for people to operate from, whereas capitalist societies destroy those because they require a desperate population to enslave. Like, what we have here is wage slavery. That's what this is. It was a wage slave society. We live in a wage slave society. And that's not me saying that. That's not kooky commie saying that. That's literally Abraham Lincoln saying that. Abraham Lincoln literally identified this type of economy and the way that we run this economy as wage slavery. He ran his platform and was elected on a platform of abolishing this system. Right? And he wasn't able to do it because he got into a war with the South over chattel slavery, which is a different form of slavery. And while it was happening, the chattel slaves were actually arguing that wage slavery was a worse system than chattel slavery. That their argument was that, well, we own, like, these people are property. We own them as property. So that means if there's no work, we still have to take care of them. We can't just throw them into the street. Wage slavers can. That you pay them a wage, and when the work dries up, you say bye-bye, and then they're left to fend for themselves. And that was the argument from the chattel slavers about why wage slavery was a worse system than chattel slavery. And it is true that wage slavers, like, I have experienced this personally in my life, that when your owner wants to be rid of you, he can just get rid of you. And libertarian freedom lovers will be like, well, that's his right. And I'm like, yeah, great. So you're just defending the feudal king, basically. JoJo's a weird show, dude. JoJo's a weird show. Yeah, Distro, I don't need children coming in here and telling me what my life is. Like, grow up. Yeah, okay. We can just be done about this. Like, I don't care about banning you people. Like, you're fucking kids. Yeah, freedom to die because you're poor. Exactly. I'd like to challenge the point on Russia growth staggering over the last couple of days. The GDP has risen from since 1998. I don't want to bring up graphs and shit, dude. Lack of freedom in what sense? The freedom to be homeless? Yeah. Do you think communist nations should still have democracy? I think, yeah. And guess what? Like, China today and the Soviet Union were democracies. Like, Soviet means council. Like, how the Soviet system worked is it was a series of unions, basically, guilds, if you prefer, right? Groups of people who would elect people. Right? You had elected representatives in a series of councils, and then those elected representatives would elect other representatives, which would elect other representatives, upon which Stalin stood, basically, right? But it was a series of electoral politics. This idea that the Soviet system was a totalitarian, like a dictatorship, is literally CIA propaganda. The CIA itself has admitted that the Soviet system was a collective democracy, like, and the Chinese system is very much the same. It's just a different style of democracy than what we have. It's not Westminster parliamentary democracy. It's not American constitutional democracy. It's a different style of democracy, and I don't think that you can actually organize complex societies unless they're democracies. That if you literally had a dictator, and that's what was happening, it was just a dictator that was just like looking at stuff and pointing and being like, you do this, and then you do this, that's going to collapse immediately. Because a single individual, it's the reason why the oligarch system doesn't work, right? Because you have these narcissistic, detached psychopaths who go to Jeffrey Epstein's sex island, pretending as though they can dictate terms and respond to people when they can't, right? They literally can't. It's just not possible. So you need to have some kind of democratic structure, because how else do you actually expect to respond to the needs of the people? How do you expect to rule people? How do you expect to maintain your position? How do you expect to actually maintain legitimacy unless you're listening to what the people say and then responding somehow to that, right? Freedom in capitalism is the MAID program being expanded to include mentally ill and poor people. Yeah. It's not the system's fault you have no job or home. It literally is, bro. Like, by definition, it literally is. Like, what a disgraceful position to hold. That it's not the system's fault you have no job or home. Then what's the point of the system? What's the point of it? Why do we follow their laws? Why do we pay attention to the rules or the laws? And I know what your answer is. Because we'll beat you up with cops if you don't. So it's just explicitly fascist threats. That's literally all you have. Just junk. What good is a democracy that allows reactionary capitalism to win in a socialist society? You should ask why a socialist country should just liberalize. Liberal democracy has done nothing for people, yeah. The GOAT, why should we have to pay people to be mothers? Nazi Germany gave people awards for having 4 kids. I'm sorry, dude. Are we praising Nazi Germany? Is that what we're doing? I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt here, dude. You be sure to step down from praising Nazi Germany, okay? Not a good position. Not a good look. Not something I expect from the GOAT. I read 1984 once, so I know lots about communism, yeah. Weren't gulags also used for political prisoners and political deviants? I mean, I'm going to assume that question's asked in good faith. So what people generally know about the Soviet Union during the quote-unquote gulag period, right, is what's called here in the West the Great Terror or the Great Purges. Like, literally a high-level named Sergei Kirov is assassinated, right? Imagine if Kamala Harris was assassinated. Well, you think the United States government would just be like, yeah, that's fine. Sure, high-ranking, like the vice president was assassinated. We don't need to do any investigation in that whatsoever. We don't need to have a trial. We don't need to incarcerate people. Nah, normal. Nah. There would be like a mass investigation. There would be people being like, we got to find out who did this. We've got to figure out what's going on within the party. How is it that a assassin was able to get through our security, get through our defenses, and get to one of the highest ranking, literally one of Stalin's right-hand men, and assassinate him? Like, that's a problem, bro. Like, that's a problem. And we don't take that seriously in the United States and Canada at all. Like, we pretend as though that didn't happen. We're literally sitting here being like, Stalin went crazy and just started purging people. Like, no, bro. Like, no, that's an unserious position. So, yeah, they sent assassins and people who plotted political assassinations to the gulags, for sure. Just like we would do. And don't fucking pretend like we wouldn't. Like, that's such a junk position. Cotton going hard. Liberals should be in gulags, though. A little harder than I think, but that's fine. These people don't read, yeah. Liberalism and fascism are brothers for sure. I mean, liberalism is like the soft hand glove of fascism, right? Yeah, political deviance equals Nazis, yeah. Orwell was a socialist. 1984 was an allegory about fascism. Orwell was a revolutionary. Yeah, Orwell literally worked with the British version of the CIA. Like British intelligence, basically. Like Orwell was an asset for the intelligence community. Like, liberals fund neo-Nazis. They unironically, yeah. No profit and peace, yeah. Orwell was not even a socialist. He was a British intelligent goon, yeah, for sure. I saw a gulag on Stranger Things. I saw a gulag on Stranger Things. It had killer monster guys. Absolutely. We're gonna mine the shit out of the moon. Absolutely. You have 3 Russian SKS, 1 AK, and a Chinese Type 80 sniper rifle, plus a Czechoslovakian Makarov. It needs some work, though. Bro, where do you even get this shit? Yeah, the USA has a flag on the moon. USSR could never do that, because that fucking matters. Like, that's what I love. Is like, the USA is just like, yeah, we got a flag on the moon, then we won! Yeah! So, who cares? Like, what? So you went there, put a flag on the moon, and then didn't do anything else. Like, China is literally planning to put a moon base on the moon. And, like, to mine the moon. Like, I feel bad. Kevin S. says, I feel bad for any right-winger that decides to chat in here completely outgunned. Wow. I don't like... The capitalist system no longer has credibility. Like, that's the thing. Like, it doesn't even have credible arguments anymore. It's become so obvious, and it's so empty now. And I find that, like, what I do say about libertarians as sort of an olive branch is that I respect that they understand something's gone wrong, right? I say this about, like, the People's Party of Canada here in Canada, and libertarians generally. I find that they are politically ahead of people like liberals for example, because they intrinsically do understand that something has gone wrong. Their prescriptions are terrible, right? Their prescriptions basically are, let's just do more of the thing that got us here in the first place. And that's largely because libertarians don't actually understand the structure of the system they live in. They don't really understand the oligarchy. They don't really understand the structure of capital. They don't understand concepts like monopolization. Like, the whole libertarian principle, the whole principle of libertarianism falls apart instantly. Like, everybody should just do what they like. Okay, but then the big fish eats the smaller fish and gets bigger, and then eventually you end up with a monopoly, right? That's how it goes, whether you like it or not. And if your response to that, and if your answer to that is, well, we should have some sort of system in place to prevent monopoly, then you have a state. Like, and I'm just like, it just feels like there's a lot of reinventing the wheel that happens in libertarianism and a lot of that kind of stuff. And I just straight up would like to say to a lot of these libertarian guys, like, I like your passion. I like where you're coming from. I like your starting location. Read the Communist Manifesto. Read the Communist Manifesto. Literally open it up, read the Communist Manifesto, and go, oh yeah, this is actually exactly what I think. Because it is. Because it is. Like, the heart of libertarianism I respect a great deal, but you gotta get into the brain. You gotta get into the brain. And I don't think libertarians really get there very often. I didn't know Orwell was a British intelligence operative. Wasn't Orwell a fake name? I don't know, dude. Okay, let's say, this is from Draz Slime. Here we go. Okay, let's say hypothetically we lived in the USSR and you shit-talked the government. You would go to prison, the gulag, but you'd probably deny that. Well, okay, like, are you talking about, like, sitting in a pub, right, being like, I don't know about what Stalin's doing here, grumble, grumble, right? Or are you talking about, like, organizing a revolutionary force, right? Like, you understand what a color revolution is, right? Like, you understand that there were, like, Nazi spies, right? Like, you get what happened in the Soviet Union, right? Like, do you understand what happened in the Soviet Union? Because I genuinely don't think you do. Like, you're pretending like this is rural Nebraska, where I'm going to grumble about a Republican, and that means I'm going to go vote for a Democrat. And you basically end up electing a guy who just says yes, sir, to corporate power anyway, right? Like, you understand that grumbling in the Soviet Union against Stalin would be like, we should organize with the Nazis and kill people. Like, you get that, right? Because it doesn't seem like you do. Doesn't seem like you understand the stakes, you know? I feel like you've kind of been mollycoddled. You live in a society where you can grumble politically and it's completely fine because the system itself is structured in such a way so that it's a dead end no matter what you do. So you can grumble against the Republican and the Democrat, watch Fox News, watch CNN, engage in this fake system that doesn't actually, it's just theater. It's just theater what you're doing, right? And then you come on here and you say, in the Soviet Union, you couldn't engage theatrically in fake politics. Because the politics that they were dealing with was fucking real. That they were dealing with, like, Nazi invasions that killed 20 million people. They were dealing with assassinations that were killing high-level officials. Not to mention plans from the British and the Americans to continue destroying them post-World War II, right? Like, you think those nuclear bombs that got dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were just, like, fun little party favors? No, dude. That was America looking at Russia going, we could do this. We could do this to you. For sure we could. What? I just don't think you're being very realistic about what was actually happening in the Soviet Union. I think that you're too used to living in this kind of false reality that has been erected around you in order to convince you that you live in a democracy when you don't. Like, you just don't. You live in an oligarchy that's structuring itself to return the economic system to feudalism. That's what's happening to you. And you're going to sit here and shit on me because Stalin took some Nazis and threw them into gulags. Like, I don't know, bro. I don't know what you need here. Like, I really don't know what you need. Yeah, prisons exist in the USA. TikTok is confusing. Yeah, TikTok sounds confusing. Yeah, it's like this kind of stuff. Like people come in and they're just like emojis. I'm like, okay, bro. Like I don't get it. I've never gotten it. Like, why are you sitting there spamming emojis? It just seems real, real odd to me, right? Hey, buddy, James, good to see you, bud. I have a question because I'm getting into these thoughts. I'd like to know more. How many communist countries have succeeded? I mean, it depends on your definition of success, bud. I would argue that the Soviet Union had massive successes, right? The first people into space defeated the Nazis, most heavily industrialized country of the century, industrialized from an agrarian monarchy into into an industrial society in a single generation, right? I would argue that those are major successes. The successes that are happening in China right now are completely undeniable, right? And also, like, once you recognize where a lot of these places started, like, you think about Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, North Korea, right? You think about these places. They literally went from being flattened, like, literally a bomb a minute was being dropped in Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and North Korea, right? Like, literally the United States. There's something like 20,000 undetonated bombs still in Laos, right? Like, it's absurd what happened to those countries. And you take where they were there and you take where they are now, and it's really hard to deny that they've been successful. Like, if you want to do it in, like, universal terms, it's like, well, Vietnam doesn't have they're not shooting rockets into space. Like, yeah, bro, they were leveled. Like, literally 60 years ago, Vietnam was rubble. Like, watch MASH. Like, fucking watch MASH. Like, I don't even know what to tell you here. Like, watch the show MASH. And they're very upfront about what happened in Korea. Like, the Americans fucking destroyed that place. And then we turn around and we're like, oh, they're a bunch of weirdos. Like, yeah, they're like rebuilding a culture and a civilization out of nothing. Out of literal gravel. Like, if you must know what I mean by freedom, I mean human rights. Well, then you're definitely not talking about America, dude. Like, American human rights. Jesus, okay. America has the largest prison system in the world. 5% of the world's prison population. 5% of the world's population. 25% of the world's prison population. Most of it black, right? Like, like human rights. What are you talking about? You talking about the detention centers, right? The concentration camps along the border. The ICE concentration camps that they have all along the Mexican-United States border. Right? Is that what we're talking about when we talk about human rights? Are we talking about the Yemeni genocide? Are we talking about the Palestinian genocide? Are we talking about the destruction of the Middle East, Africa, South America? Like, what are we talking about when we're talking about human rights? Sounds to me like what you're talking about is the right for white men to own people. Seems to me that that's what human rights means to you. You're aware that Republicans freed the slaves. Yeah, the Lincoln Republicans are not today's Republicans, bro. Pretty, and it was the Democrats that founded the KKK. Yeah, and dude, I don't give a shit about that. I think that the Republicans and the Democrats work for the oligarchs, and I don't give a shit. Like, if you're trying to say to me that, oh, this guy likes the Democrats, no, fuck that. The Democrats are just as bad as the Republicans. They're just bad in a different way. They both work for neoliberal capital. They both work for the oligarchy. They both work for corporations. That you are talking to a guy who literally says that what American democracy is a WWE wrestling match. Andre the Giant comes in, we all boo and hiss or cheer, right? The Ultimate Warrior comes in, we all boo or hiss or cheer, we pick our side, right? They have a little conflagration and a fight. We're all like, yeah, fuck yeah. And then when it's over, right, and some kind of chicanery and some kind of shit happens, and when it's all over and we all go home, those two men shake each other's hands, say good performance, and both get paid by Vince McMahon. That's American democracy. So if you're going to sit here and try to convince me that the Republicans are better than the Democrats or the Democrats are better than the Republicans, you're a fucking dupe. You're a dupe. You're literally engaging in a system that is theater exclusively. They're not interested in doing anything for you. They're not interested in helping you. They're not interested in putting forward any kind of agenda whatsoever that's actually going to improve your life whatsoever. And if all you do politically is point at the blue guy or the red guy and say, you're the problem, then they're winning, because that's their goal. Their goal is to make it so that you think politics is pointing at the red guy or the blue guy and going, you're the problem, right? Divide and conquer. That's the strategy. And if you fall for it, then you're a fucking rube. And it's straightforward as that. Yeah, which human rights? Any type of research would prove you wrong. Off you go then, Draz. Do the research. Go off. Off you go then. You haven't read a fucking thing. Like, you're illiterate, bud. Like, I know it. Yeah, I can tell. Like, you all you do is regurgitate bullshit that you've seen on CNN and Fox. Like, literal CIA talking points. That's all you've done. You haven't read a goddamn thing. You've never read the Communist Manifesto. You've never read Das Kapital. You've never read the works of Adam Smith. Right? If you read Adam Smith, you would know better. Right? Forget about Marx. If you literally read Adam Smith, you would know better. But you haven't. And then you get to point to people and be like, any type of research will prove you wrong. You're illiterate. Go read a book. Are having homes, having food and medicine not human rights? Yeah. No need to engage with them toxic kids. I just love to hear you rant about stuff. Thanks, Veselin. I appreciate that, bud. I rather like ranting. I gotta tell you, I rather like it. It's cathartic. There's a cathartic kind of thing about this that happens to me. I love it. What's going on? I hope you guys are doing well on TikTok. I am gonna just point at you guys for a second and be like, hey, TikTok, you guys are nuts. The emoticon, yeah, exactly. That's basically what happens on TikTok. Just a bunch of people being like, I'm gonna put in emojis, and that means I'm interacting meaningfully with the world. You do what you gotta do, guys. You do what you gotta do. If you want a genuine conversation, it's on YouTube, okay? Don't fucking lie, though. Russian populist was corrupt and you know it. The Russian communist Perry was corrupt and you know it. I mean, I think I need a larger definition of, like, the history of the Soviet project and the communist project throughout that period is complex. Like, it's not as simple as this. And I find that that's essentially what Westerners want it to be. They just want it to be straightforward. Communism is evil. It's bad. Go away. The only way to rule. The end of history is capitalism. And it's not how it is. Straight up, it just isn't how it is. Right? And like, oh, the first time a communist project was ever attempted didn't 100% work completely. Therefore, the whole project is over. It's just kind of a baby-brained take. Like, so what do you mean when you say it was corrupt? Like, corrupt how? Like, in what way? Like, if you talk to a Trotskyist, they think it was corrupted when Stalin took over. If you talk to a capitalist, they think the whole thing was corrupt from the beginning. So, what do you mean? Yeah, when your Soviet failed its voters, the proletariat called riot, act on their Soviet. Beautiful thing for the workers. Yeah. The graphs that we don't want to look at represent the USSR's total input, though. If they had moved to capitalism and their GDP has risen, I'm sure there's a sign communism cannot sustain itself. Honestly, Morgs, you're getting into like very specific arguments right here that if you could find something for me to search, I would search it and look at it. But you're basically asking me right now to do research on stream, and I just think that that's boring to look at and boring to watch. So if you want me to look at something, honestly, the most efficient way, Morgs, to do it is to donate to me and then get in my Discord. If you donate $1 to me in my Patreon, it gets you in my Discord, and then you can actually send me articles and things that I can put on here and look at, and you can request stuff, and I'll gladly do it. I don't ever want to shy away from like evidence and research, but I'm not going to do research on stream. So if you have something you want me to look at, get me to look at it. But I'm not going to do the research on stream because it's boring. And, you know, we gotta at least be interesting. So I'm not trying to discount you or trying to push away what you're saying, but I am just saying, like, you are asking me to do research, and I just am not going to do that right now. Gulags, mass genocide, the purge, explain that it's not a dictatorship. So gulags are prisons. American has the largest prison system. Like, the American prison system that exists today dwarfs, by comparison, what happened to the Soviet Union. And oh no, they incarcerated Nazis and assassins. Oh no, guys! They took people to a gulag! Oh! I know the word gulag is scary, dude. Gulag! Gulag! Oh, the gulag! It's so scary! Gulag! It's a prison, right? And moreover, it's a prison they inherited from literal monarchs and kings and shit. So, like, what? They're not going to use a prison? Like, sorry, man. The Gulag argument is just so, like, I roll my eyes at that shit. What, you think they didn't incarcerate Nazis? The Nazis killed 200 million people. You think they didn't use this system to incarcerate Nazis and Nazi collaborators and Nazi spies? Like, the disrespect people have for literally World War II. That Americans will hold their hand to their heart and be like, America, the World War II vets were the greatest people that our generation has ever produced. We defeated the Nazis. Superman and Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck just punching the shit out of Hitler, right? Like, we're literally like, oh yeah, we're the greatest ever. But the people who actually won that war were the Soviets. Not even close, by the way. 20 million people died in that war. They were fighting the most technologically advanced military force that had ever been fielded at that time, which was the Nazis. And this idea that they're going to just have 20 million people die and then not also use prisons is dumb. It's dumb. Like, have some fucking respect. Have some fucking respect. Mass genocide, I assume you're talking about the Holodomor. So the Soviet archive's been opened up. Even the CIA and the State Department admit that famine that occurred was not intentional, right? Natural disasters happen. And the whole narrative of the Holodomor comes out of the Nazis. That it's a Nazi talking point, that they accused the Soviets of intentionally creating a famine in Ukraine. And that's the long and short of it. Like, I just don't think I need to push any further on that. Literally every single academic that has looked at the Soviet archive has come away saying that. And not communists. Like, straight up people who are like, communism is bad, I'm a capitalist, but yeah, these guys did not intend for this to happen. Like, sorry, bro. The Purge, yeah. No, they had an investigation and tried to get people who were assassinating communist leaders out of their ranks. Like, come on, bro. If Kamala Harris got assassinated, they would do the same thing. And you know that's true. Explain that as not a dictatorship. I feel like I just did. Like, shit happens, right? People deal with it. Like, you're just disrespectful. Like, you just don't care. Like, that's the long and short of it, dude. You just don't give a shit. Like, you want them to be bad because Russia bad. And so you're just saying that all of the negative shit that happened in Russia, or all of the shit that happened in Russia, right? Which, when you actually look at nations, is how it goes, right? Like, shit happens in nations and people have to deal with it, right? Like, shit happens in nations and people have to deal with it. And if all you're going to do is be like, shit happened and they dealt with it, so that's a dictatorship, then you sound stupid. Straight up, dude. Like, you just sound dumb. Like, have some fucking respect. Benito, if you voted against Stalin in the USSR, you would have been shot instantly. Wow, bro. Like, that's... That's like low-level baby brain time, dude. If you voted against Stalin in the USSR, you would have been shot instantly. Like, bro, that's just stupid. Oh, I love this. 1950s famine in China leading to 50 million dead, both capitalist and communism horror. The 1950s famine in China didn't happen, bro. There's literally no evidence of it. It didn't happen. That's just a CIA talking point. Straight up. Like, go off and find me the evidence, okay? Off you go. And the CIA claiming it happened isn't evidence. Like, where's a photograph? Where's a political commentator? Where's a China watcher watching it happen? Where's anybody during the time actually seeing it happen and commenting on it? Where is it? Where's the refugee crisis? You're telling me 50 million people died. So at the time, the Chinese population was 600 billion rather. So you're telling me that 50 million people died in a population of 600 billion? Oh, you said 50 million. Oh, okay. That's like the lowest I've ever seen that number, by the way. 50 million. What am I saying right now? I just said 500 billion. Okay. 600 million people, 50 million of them died. So you would expect 50 million people to flee from that, right? They're not just going to stand there and watch these people die of starvation and be like, we're just going to stay here. You would see people flee. So where's the refugee crisis? Didn't happen, right? You're telling me that Mao managed to kill 50 million of his own citizens and the Chinese people were like, this was a good leader. Like, feels very xenophobic, dude. Feels very like, what, you think Chinese people aren't people? You think that they wouldn't look at that and be like, we got to get rid of this Mao guy? Like, show me the evidence, bro. Where is it? What's my favorite show? I don't know if I have one. Rick and Morty. If I had to pick one right now, Rick and Morty. Rick and Morty's doing real good storytelling these days. Its most recent episode was a real meta. It was real fun. I really respect what Rick and Morty is bringing to the table. This whole stream is a lesson in turning the lumpen proletariat into the proletariat. I hope so, dude. We should all become the proletariat. Yeah, imagine killing 40 million people due to birds and mismanagement. Yeah, you would have to imagine that. Because that's what happened. People imagined that. Like, imagine believing that a culture would create a famine that could kill 40 million people by killing birds. Like, really deal with the xenophobia that exists inside of you, dude. Like, listen out loud to what your claim is and understand how stupid it sounds. That the Chinese went around and killed a bunch of sparrows with slingshots and shit, and this cascaded into a famine that killed, in your words, 40 million people. That's as stupid as anything that's ever been said. It does not get stupider. Like, the only way you could believe it is if you think Chinese people are dumb. Like idiocracy dumb. Like, not capable dumb. Like, you basically just got to think that they're subhuman. Because, like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Is this what I do all day? Nope. Why are you ignoring me? I've literally been talking to you this whole time. You call everyone who disagrees with you a fascist while forgetting casual fascism had socialist elements. God, just embarrassing. Because Nazis don't lie. Just embarrassing. Like, I couldn't get through Charlottson and his Archipelago book. Yeah, I mean, if what you base things on is literally works of fiction, like the Gulag Archipelago, I don't know. Your logic makes no sense. You haven't got proof that communism works for the people. I mean, proofs in the pudding, bud. Like, China has lifted 800 million people out of poverty over the last 20 years. Like, you know what, bro? I think we got to do it. I think we got to do it, chat. Right? We got to do it. Like, here's your terrible China society, right? Here's the terrorism. Oh my God, everybody. The totalitarian dictatorship. The evil society of China. Like, if I can't convince you, maybe your eyes will. Like, it's very obvious that none of you have actually looked at this place. You don't know anything about it. Like, you literally know nothing about it. Like, really ask yourself, and be serious. Like, be a grown-up adult and genuinely turn your skeptical eye upon yourself and ask yourself, what do you know about China? What do you know? And the answer is nothing. Like, the answer is nothing. Like, you've never read a book. You've never listened to Xi Jinping. You've never read anything that Deng wrote. You never read anything that Mao wrote. You're illiterate. And how do I know you're illiterate? Because you're using CIA talking points. Like, garbage trash that even the CIA itself refutes. Like, look at this place. Communism doesn't work. Communism never works anywhere in the world. It doesn't work anywhere in the world. Nowhere, ever, in the world. Literally 80 years ago, this was a dust field. Like, Jesus fucking Christ. Keep talking about capitalism, not giving people homes, while people in Yugoslavia had nowhere to live during Tito. You want to bring up Yugoslavia, dude? Like, is that the depth of your illiteracy, that you're literally bringing up Yugoslavia as a point? when NATO was so heavily involved in Yugoslavia and the destruction of Yugoslavia. Like, bro, you just straight up embarrassed yourself. Like, you're illiterate. It was Map's fault to your research. You haven't, clearly. Imagine dying because you made a joke about the Communist Party. Yeah, you would have to. Because it's just your imagination. Hey, John. Hey, Andrew. How you doing? Gonna keep it real. I'm American, and most Americans make under 30K statistically speaking. Let me tell you seriously, the wages for most of these jobs suck. And you have every right to crap on America. Yeah, absolutely, dude. Like, and now we're getting into a point where, like, the average wage... Do I even have that? I saw it recently. But the average price that you have to actually have... Yeah, here you go. You now need to earn at least $100,000, $107,281 annually to own a home. What's the average earning for an American? It's like $35,000. Like, get the fuck out of here. Even if it was $50,000. Even if it was $60,000. Like, get the fuck right out of here. The system has failed. This obviously failed. Like, and we're talking about systemic, catastrophic failure. Right? Forget about your dumb, abstract nonsense that's coming out of the chat now. Right? Literally, the average wage earner cannot own a home. The system has failed. You don't need to go any deeper. Like, if it cannot provide housing, if it cannot provide shelter, it's a failure. And if you're going to stand up and say, well, it's not your fault, but you're basically defending kings. Like, it is grow up time for a lot of you. It's grow up time. Like, big grow up time. Fuck communism, fuck capitalism, and fuck you, Finland, forever. All right, Ethan. Whatever you're dealing with, bud, you keep dealing with it. Tito, blah, blah. CR Strifey, welcome aboard, but good to see you, man. I'm super happy to see you. I'm streaming on TikTok at the same time. So what's happening is people are coming from TikTok. Hi, TikTok. I hope you guys are doing really well out there. Mwah. Mwah. People are coming from TikTok and you know, regurgitating CIA talking points on here. So it's a party, man. I'm happy about it. This fucker's uneducated. Benito, dude, you're literally illiterate, dude. Like, you don't know anything about what you're talking about, and it's really, really obvious. Like, fuck. Unbelievable. All those rifles worth a fortune, but back in the 90s, paid $500 for a whole lot. Look at you, bud. Investment, right? You got in early. You're going deer hunting with a British 303 from World War I? Dude, that is how you do it. That's how you do it. When these guys go out hunting and they got like assault rifles and like crazy shit and all this, I'm like, nah, bro. I'm going out there with a British 303. Fuck yeah. You're like give the deer a chance is what I like to say. Yeah, John is streaming on TikTok. We're flooded with kids. Yeah, the only thing I agree is people make fun of a guy committing suicide. So here you go, Benito. We can agree on that. Let's look at that, okay? So there's a base. There's a base agreement that we can have with one another and find each other's humanity in all of this, right? And I think that is important. That I am not just interested in shitting on people and dismissing people who disagree with me, right? I try to educate, and I'm glad to hear, Benito, that even as you think that I am an uneducated commie, that you at least have within you a base understanding that making fun of somebody committing suicide is awful. I'm happy to hear that, bud. I'm glad that you said it. Thanks so much, Benito. I appreciate it. Democracy and communism is the most dangerous thing in the world. Whew. This guy thinks all anti-commies are Americans. I mean, these kids... Dude, I'm loving this, man. I'm loving this. I hate it when it jumps down like that. The cosmonaut. It was UK intelligence, American steel, Soviet troops that won the war. It was UK intelligence, American steel, and Soviet troops that won the war. That's not a bad way of saying it. Like, I don't think I'm going to try to disagree with that, because, like, to a degree, you're correct. I tend to take the position that America sort of both sides to that war. Like, there's a lot of examples of American corporations funding the Nazis. Like America was well positioned to be able to be more or less out of that war for the most of it. Like, and then sends troops the minute the Eastern Front turns against the Nazis. And in my perspective, I think that the Americans send troops once the war is going to go the Soviets' way, because they know that if they don't, then the Soviets are going to take all of Europe, and they can't have that. So they meet the Soviets in Germany in order to keep like France and Spain out of the hands of the Soviets. But yeah, I mean, obviously the UK played a role, and obviously America played a role. But the people who sacrificed, like the people who really sacrificed, obviously the Soviets. Like, oh, America put in a lot of steel. Okay. Am I missing something here? What's going on? I hate it when because of my opinion, I don't truly find good in communism, because it doesn't work in practice except all the times it's been done. Hey kids, you see John's chat stream? He has his shit scrolled up, so he's not seeing all the shit you're spamming. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly the truth. Hey, let me ask you this, though. How is your life going? You live in Canada, which runs under capitalism. I mean, I'm a serf. The business I work for literally got sold in exactly the fashion and it works exactly how serfdom works. That you get sold with the business. And the new ownership comes in, and the new ownership tells you how it's going to go. And if you disagree, then the ownership gets rid of you, right? That's exactly how it is. And I just don't pretend. Like I just refuse to maintain the illusion that a lot of people need to maintain. And to be honest, I do think that people need to maintain. Right? Like, I think that there is a lot of existential dread that comes with this. And that I think there's lots of people who can't handle it. Straight up, I just don't think that they have, like, the fortitude to be able to handle the truth about their own country. And if they were to look their own country in the face and acknowledge it, it would collapse them. And so it's just easier to maintain this illusion and to just live your life, going to work, you know, fueling this absurdist empire that's plan is to destroy everything. Because to do otherwise is to admit that you're participating in it. And I think that's really tough for people. I think that's really, really tough for people. Like, I say this all the time. For all you new TikTokers, you're going to hear this a lot from me if you tune in more and more. The hardest thing for a person to do is deal with themselves. It's easily the hardest thing for a person to do. And we try so hard to avoid dealing with ourselves that we do all kinds of stuff. Like we get involved in drugs and alcohol so that we don't need to deal with ourselves. We get involved in pornography and video games and technology and a bunch of stuff to distract ourselves, right? And it's very easy for me to believe that people just put their head down, grind into their work, because it's easier to do that than it is to deal with yourself. And if you actually paused and separated yourself from all of that and actually did sit down and actually try to deal with yourself, you'd realize really quickly how hard it is. It's very difficult. And so people do all kinds of things, and one of those things that people do is just maintain the myth. Maintain the myth that exists around you. Everybody agrees with it. It's harder to push back, right? It's harder to be the skeptic. You receive a lot of negative energy. You receive a lot of pushback if you are a skeptic or a contrarian. And so most people just don't do it. I think it's as simple as that. I refuse to live my life that way. I can't live my life that way. I have to know what's going on. I refuse to maintain the myths. I refuse to maintain the theater. Like, I think it's better to live honestly about what's going on in the world. Yeah, gulag's a scary word if you've never read a book past public school. Yeah. 200 million people! I'm talking to a guy streaming. Gulag sound like a dish to me because of goulash. Oh, yeah, okay. The gulag is a real thing. John, they're arguing that the Soviet system wasn't super profitable. Whether that is a reflection of material success is a different question. Oh, yeah. Hey, keep it nice, okay? I don't mind if you guys disagree with me, right? But keep it nice. Just like the next stream, there's a channel called Socialism for All on here that has so much. Yeah, Socialism for All is a good one. That's a good one to pitch. Socialism for All, Hakeem. Hakeem does really, really good work. He's a doctor who just is very informative. And he really gets into a lot of like the charts and the graphs and all that kind of stuff. Very, very informative. Second Thoughts, another good one. Canada's funding Nazis and doing MAID. Things could be better. Yeah, thanks, Major. It's absolutely true. The way communist elections work like this, blah, blah, Benito, slingshots. James, if China isn't bad and the left is terrible, watch An American Night Watch, please, buddy. I mean, okay. What city, dude? What do you want to see? Like, what do you want to see? I mean, fascist as an ideology isn't bad. Goodbye. Don't need Nazis in the chat, bud. It's one thing to be like, communism is bad and I don't think you're right. And it's another to just be like, Nazis are fine, though. This is low-key dumb. Yep. Bye, Epic. You're not important. Approximately 29 million Soviets died on the Eastern Front, by far the most casualties as far as demographics. Yeah. Communism will never work, no money, yeah, blah, blah. You 100% haven't lived in a socialist. It's corruption, no food other than bread and butter. Yeah. All the classic CIA bullshit. Approximately people from the Baltic states were sent to Siberia so people couldn't reveal the secrets of communism, the horrible living conditions. Yeah, I've seen the CIA documents too, dude. Like, I know what the Soviet Union collapsed. No, the Soviet project was betrayed. It didn't collapse. Like, the whole Soviet Union collapse narrative comes out of the West, right? And the rest of the world understands that after Stalin died, the Soviet Union was betrayed by Khrushchev and the rest of it. That the communist project stopped putting energy into it. And they moved into a system of integration with the neoliberal West that has failed. Oh, okay. You live in Latvia. Okay, great. You live in Latvia. Let's go. I love this kind of stuff. Latvia. So let's be real clear. You've never experienced communism, right? Unless you're like 89, right? So the Latvia is one of the satellite states of the Soviet Union, right? Like it existed within the Soviet structure. I wonder if Latvia is one of the ones former communist countries want to return to communism. There's a great poll. European public opinion, 3 decades. Is this the one? I hope we have Latvia right here. That'd be really good. What's interesting about this is if you actually poll the people. This isn't the one. See, I'm doing research on the stream. That's annoying. If you poll the people who live in these places, and I know that Belarus is the big shining example, but a lot of you've got a lot of nations that want a return to yeah, I do. Well, dude, I would have look. My bookmarks are huge, so it's just absolutely ridiculous. Well, and Benito, you got to be careful with that kind of statement, right? Like, one thing that I encounter an awful lot when I talk to people, and I'm not accusing you of this, right? Although it's going to sound that way. Like, were your grandparents Nazis? Like, who did your grandparents work for? Like, There's a thing that happens all the time whenever I have these conversations. Oh, my grandparents, they really talk shit about communism. They really hated it. Oh, what did they do? Oh, they worked for the Nazi Party. Oh, like, yeah, obviously they hated communism. Like, our current deputy prime minister, the current deputy prime minister here in Canada, her grandfather worked in a newspaper that was a Nazi propaganda paper. He worked for Goebbels, and she's the deputy prime minister right now. And so, yeah, I suspect our government's going to have an anti-communist bent, right? So I don't really take these sort of personal stories or these personal claims very seriously, because anytime I peel it back and actually start talking to people, I find out, yeah, okay, obviously you're going to be against communism if you're a Nazi, right? And I don't know who your parents are. I don't know who your grandparents are. Like, who raised them? How were they raised? Right? Nick Doss, National Socialism is socialism, communism. National Socialism greater than socialism, communism. We have a literal Nazi. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Literal Nazis get to go away. I've caught up with the chat. How wonderful. We're going to move on to a couple articles. Meet Gary Webb. In 1996, Gary exposed how the CIA hired drug traffickers to sell massive amounts of cocaine in the United States in order to raise untraceable funds to finance a terrorist organization who were trying to overthrow the Nicaraguan government. These massive shipments of cocaine ultimately sparked the crack epidemic that decimated inner cities during the 90s. As a result, mainstream media vilified Gary Webb and destroyed his career, which also destroyed his marriage. But he refused to back down. In 2004, he was found dead with 2 bullet wounds to his head. His death was ruled a suicide. Ugh, Milo, bud. I know, bud. Hearing about Gary Webb, it's a real problem, isn't it? Isn't it? My dog's whining because I'm not paying attention to him. He's talking, but he's not talking to me. Here's an article that comes from the Toronto Star. Doug Ford, who is a fascist, literally he's destroying democracy, quite literally, in the province of Ontario. Like, he's passing legislation that allows 1/3 of city councils to pass legislation. Like, it is the end of democracy in Ontario, near as I can tell. And that's not just me. Like, you literally have the Globe and Mail reporting on it that way. So fascist Doug Ford's flip-flop on the Greenbelt leaves me at a loss for words. Premier Doug Ford recently announced he was flip-flopping on his solemn pledge to protect the Greenbelt. Under the banner of his pledge to build new housing, he's opening for development 15 specific areas of land around the GTA, that's the Greater Toronto Area, that were previously unprotective. An investigation conducted by the Toronto Star and the Narwhal revealed, surprise, surprise, much of that land is owned by developers who are big donors or otherwise have ties to Ford's party, some of whom only recently bought the properties that are conveniently about to skyrocket in value. Hearing this, a few C words might spring to mind. Conservation? No, that's not one of them. How about credulous, since that's what you'd have to be to buy that this is earnestly intended as an effective method of improving housing affordability? Reading similar news, what would we expect a Ford to think? What C word might the Ford family use to describe how a situation like this looks? Could we learn anything by recalling the time in 2010 when Doug Ford sat with his brother Rob for an interview with the Toronto Sun and discussed how a business had been given sole source contract which, and this might sound familiar, was contrary to established procedure and came after giving donations to politicians involved? Ugh. I get worried about this, Dastry. Like, where is this going? I get worried about this. Corruption and skullduggery was the phrase Rob Ford famously landed on for the whole process. Doug agreed. There's a culture of corruption down there, and we're going to put an end to it, he said. That's a C word, corruption. Like, Doug Ford is literally ripping up the Greenbelt. And the Greenbelt is, like, one of the biggest conservation areas in the province of Ontario. I find that the Ronnie McNutt stuff to be disgraceful, dude. Like, disgraceful. Like, even people who are actively calling me stupid in chat are better than you. Like, just gross. Just absolutely gross. Just get out of here. Grow up. Learn some empathy. Learn some compassion. Even a guy like Benito, who's calling me an idiot, is we can agree on this point, that we have base compassion and empathy for the basics of what it means to be a human being. Like, grow up. Grow up. Quite seriously. Like, it's desperately important for yourself and for the people around you. Grow up. Mr. Am I going to have to say this over? I feel like I've got to record something and just play it every single time somebody asks this. Communism has had major successes. What are we doing? Nah. Elon Musk. Hold on. Elon Musk, dude. We got to talk about Muskie. Elon Musk is absolutely, like, case in point of why the capitalist system is a complete and total failure. Right? What Elon Musk is doing to Twitter is what he did at Tesla and SpaceX. Firing people, talking of bankruptcy, telling workers to be hardcore. Mr. Musk has repeatedly used those tactics at many of his companies. This is from the New York Times. You know, a newspaper from the dark heart of the imperial core. Elon Musk was sleeping at the office. He dismissed employees and executives at will, and he lamented his company was on the verge of bankruptcy. That was back in 2018, and the company was Tesla, as Mr. Musk's electric automaker struggled to build its mass-market vehicle, the Model 3. It was excruciating, he told the New York Times at the time. There were times when I didn't leave the factory for 3 or 4 days. Days when I didn't go outside. The billionaire's experience with what he called Tesla's production hell has become a blueprint for the crisis he has created at Twitter, which he bought for $44 billion last month. Over the years, Mr. Musk has developed a playbook for managing his companies, including Tesla and the rocket manufacturer SpaceX, through periods of pain, employing shock treatment and alarmism, and pushing his workers and himself to put aside their families and friends to spend all their energy on his mission. So here's the New York Times literally reporting on the reality that Elon Musk is a disaster, that he's a crisis, that this is a pattern that he does. We're just seeing it publicly. And of course I like Radiohead. Who doesn't love Radiohead? And I bet you at the end of this article we're all supposed to be like, Elon Musk is the capitalist champion, instead of like, no, he's a total failure. Like, he completely, like, this is how he acts. He gets into companies that are otherwise working and starts smashing them, right? Just absolutely unbelievable. Since late last month, the 51-year-old has laid off 50% of Twitter's 7,500 employees and accepted the resignations of 1,200 or more. On Monday, he began another round of layoffs. 2 people, he said. He tweeted that he was sleeping at Twitter's offices in San Francisco, and he has applied mission-driven language, telling Twitter's workers that the company could go bankrupt if he wasn't able to turn it around. Those who want to work on Twitter 2.0 must commit to his hardcore vision in writing, he has said. Like, what a nightmare boss this guy is. David Deek, who worked at Tesla from 2014 to 2016 as a senior engineering manager overseeing a supply chain for battery materials, said Mr. Musk clearly thrives in existential circumstances. He added, he quasi-creates them to light the fire under everyone. The similarities between Mr. Musk's approach to Twitter and what he did at Tesla and SpaceX are evident, added Tammy Madsen, a management professor at Santa Clara University. But it's unclear if he will find the means to motivate employees at a social media company, as he did with workers whose quests were to move people away from gas-powered cars or send humans into space. At Tesla and SpaceX, the approach has always been high risk, high reward, Dr. Madsen said. Twitter has been high risk, but the question is, what is the reward that comes out of it? Mr. Musk did not respond to a request for comment. On Sunday, Mr. Musk held a meeting with Twitter's sales employees, according to 2 people with knowledge of the matter. Then, on Monday, he laid off employees in the sales department, they said. Last week, Mr. Musk fired Robin Wheeler, a top sales executive, they added. Bloomberg later reported that more layoffs might be coming. Just a fucking chaotic disaster. Like, when Twitter goes down, that's when people might actually start going like, does Muskie know what's up? Does he know what he's doing? The answer is no, right? Like we're supposed to venerate this idea that he's like, oh, he's sleeping at the office and he's doing like that's unhealthy. That's just a terrible way to do things. Just like literally, if you are sacrificing your personal health and your personal life to something to such a degree where you need to like be sleeping at the office in order to justify, oh my God, it's going to collapse and all this kind of stuff, like you might be doing the wrong thing. Especially when it was otherwise working. Like that's the part about this story that's so fucking crazy, guys. The part about this story that's so fucking crazy is that Twitter was otherwise working. Like, maybe you could make an argument that there were some ideological difficulties or all this kind of stuff, but you didn't need to actually walk in to fucking destroy it, right? Watermelon leg, you are probably illiterate, dude. Like, I've seen it over and over and over again. Communists had to make a wall to keep people in. So, yeah, certainly they're not defending themselves against fucking Nazis and shit. Like, certainly not the case. That there's, like, counter-revolutionaries and shit. Like, Jesus. At companies led by Mr. Musk, the pattern of claiming the firms are on the brink of potential bankruptcy has come up often. At Tesla, in December 2008, during the depths of the financial crisis, Mr. Musk closed a $50 million investment round from Daimler. He said on the last hour of the last day possible, or payroll would have bounced 2 days later. From Elon Musk, Tesla financing round closed at 6 p.m., December 24th, 2008. Last hour of the day possible, or payroll would have bounced 2 days later. I gave Tesla last of my remaining cash from PayPal. Didn't even own a house or anything sellable, except all your fucking stocks, dude. Come on. He has said the same about SpaceX, once noting that both SpaceX and Tesla had a more than 90% chance that they would be worth $0 in their early days. For 2017, Mr. Musk said SpaceX had to perform rocket launches once every 2 weeks or face bankruptcy, recalled one former SpaceX executive, who spoke on the condition of anonymity for fear of retribution. That's a healthy work environment right there. At a company that was driven by a goal to make life multi-planetary. The threat of bankruptcy was a motivating factor, the former executive said. This whole article is just, they really are just going to stick on, like, jerking Elon off, aren't they? Right? There was an initial burst of activity to reorganize the company, he said last Wednesday, adding, I expect to reduce my time at Twitter. Yeah, you'll be reducing your time at Twitter. It's going to collapse. Twitter is going to collapse. Yeah, Watermelon dude, yeah, obviously there are people who are defecting. People defect one way or the other, right? It's like when, what you're basically doing is taking a very human thing that always happens every single time and blowing it up and universalizing it. I see this all the time, right? You decontextualize an event or you decontextualize something and then you universalize it, right? And you pretend as though like, oh, wow, we've got one guy who did one thing one time, or there's a handful of people who did one thing one time, right? Oh, Milo! Milo, my man. Milo, my man. My man, Milo. We still good? We're still good. Milo, my man. I gotta tell you, dude. You almost broke Twitter. You almost broke TikTok, I should say. You almost broke. Come on. Yeah. My man. I know you're just a dog, dude. You don't know. No, you don't know, my man. You don't know. I know you didn't mean it. I know you didn't mean it, my little guy. You're not trying to destroy TikTok. You're not trying to destroy TikTok. You're not trying to make it bad for everybody. Say hello to TikTok, Milo. That's TikTok. TikTok is full of people who are kind of crazy at the moment. Right? There are a lot of people who really care about Ronnie McNutt for some reason. And a lot of people come in and regurgitate CIA talking points. Yeah, we got a lot of CIA talking points coming into the chat right now, man. Do you know that? And a lot of people who insist that I talk exclusively to them when I don't have to do that at all. You know that? A lot of people who think that they get just to take up all the oxygen in the room and pretend as though the chat is actually theirs or that it's their live stream when they actually don't matter that much. Off you go. Oh man, this Elon Musk shit is absolutely hilarious, dude. Like he's proving to us in real time that he's a complete and total failure. Like, it was everyone. That's why people were crowding up when the wall was opening up. As the Iron Curtain was falling, many East Berliners traveled to other countries to get to the West. Yeah, Watermelon. Like, you're making a big deal about this, but here's, like, a war happened, right? Remember the war, right? Remember how dislocating that war was, right? So what ends up happening, this is very, very understandable, is that you have people who are trapped on one side, right, of a post-war world, and another group of people who are trapped on the other side, and their family, and they want to get reconnected with one another, right? And you're just deciding that it's because of communism. It's because of this. When it's likely that there's a lot of crossover that happens, there's just a lot of people who are going back to their families, right? A lot of people who are sick and tired of dealing with the war and the fallout of the war and the consequences of these wars, and who want to get back and get a stable life going again, right? Like, I really encourage people to start thinking about these events from a human perspective and not an exclusively political perspective. Like, there's an enormous... I am going to start banning these people. Like, get your CIA bullshit out of here, dude. It's embarrassing. You're embarrassing. Like, not everything that ever happens all the time is because capitalism or communism or this kind of thing. And the fall of the Berlin Wall is one of those moments, right? Like, when the wall falls, it's not some political force that makes it happen. It's the people themselves. That the people go to the wall and they say, this needs to end, and they end it, right? And it's not... I think both capitalism and communism don't really work at all. Both have a lot of wall. I mean, I mean, yeah, the border wall, fucking Trump's wall, all that kind of crazy shit. Like, if you want to get into... Like, at least you are admitting that capitalism doesn't work. That puts you ahead of the game, Watermelon. Like, that we have to explore alternative systems. We have to explore different scenarios. But if we're going to do that, then we need to be honest about what actually happened under communism. And we're not very honest. Like, we're not very honest. This chat is proof positive, dude. Like, this is crazy CIA talking point shit right here. Like... that people coming in and China looks sad. Okay, bud. I know to ignore you now. Like, if you say so, man. The all government types will have stuff better than others, but overall, capitalism has more parts that are better for the lives of the people. Okay. Is it the 600,000 homeless? Is that what makes life better for the people? Right? Is it the medically assisted dying program? Is it the fact that disabled people are being thrown into the streets? Is that what's making lives better for people? Like, maybe it's the nuclear bombardments or the constant war, right? Maybe that's making life better for people, right? It's like, what you have is privileged white people who think that everyone's living the same life that they're living. There's 600,000 homeless people in the United States. You just don't know about them because the CIA doesn't tell you. Like, people will stand up and say the most outrageous things about capitalism that can be shut down with very simple talking, like very, very simple points. Just simple observation. Out of 300 million people? Yeah, dude, that's a fucking disaster. Like, how many people died in COVID? Right? We won't shut up about that. Like 1 million people died of COVID. It's like a massive crisis. Are you literally just going to go to like, that's fine? That's a big yikes from me, bud. Here we go. We've gotten into it now, Benito. There can never be a perfect economic system. We cannot understand the perfect economy and prices. Only God can. Okay, bud. I didn't realize I was talking to my dad today. Okay. Vaughn, I couldn't get on your last several live streams, were inaccessible. I don't know what to tell you, bud. Oh, the WEF, dude. I think that people, first of all, no, I do not love the WEF. I think the WEF is a fucking catastrophe, but it's not as important as people think it is. But like the right really fucking goes after the WEF because the right is more conspiracy minded. But the WEF is still like, it's rich people getting together and plotting the demise of the working class. Like that's what it is. It's just, I think what's so funny about the WEF is like, it used to be the Illuminati, right? It used to be like this shadowy undergroup, right? And then it transferred into being like, and now it's transferred to the WEF, and they're just doing it openly now, right? Like they don't need to keep any of this secret. Like they're literally publishing documents talking about a great reset and how they're going to destroy the society and all this kind of shit. Like, and they're being open about it. Like they don't need to, because they know nobody gives a shit or pays attention. And if they do give a shit and if they do care, then their solutions are like libertarians coming out and being like, we should just do capitalism harder. Yeah, the solution is to sell ourselves to these oligarchs even more. Like, yeah, I'd be over the moon if that's what I heard the people talking about. Fantastic Pokemon, I did get vaccinated because during the COVID period, I stayed very neutral because I thought that everybody was saying interesting things. Like, we should be skeptical of large-scale institutions. We should be skeptical of the government. We should be skeptical of pharmaceutical companies. We should be skeptical. And I think the right and the anti-vax community was correct about that, and still is correct about that. And we should still investigate them. We should still be interested in all of that. But at the same time, it was a health crisis, right? There is a health crisis going on. That I think is completely undeniable. And so at the end of the day, I deferred to the people that we should always defer to, which is the workers. And in this case, the workers were the doctors and the nurses. And what were the doctors and nurses saying universally across the board? Get vaccinated. And so I listened to them. I didn't listen to the World Health Organization. I didn't listen to my government. I didn't listen to pharmaceutical companies. I didn't listen to anybody else. I listened to doctors and nurses, and they were saying get vaccinated, so I did. Oh, Fantastic wants to go real deep. Did you know that the Rockefeller Foundation planned the pandemic in 2015? I'd be very surprised to find that was true. I think that it's more likely that something like the Rockefeller Foundation put into place policies and ideas should a pandemic occur. And that's different, right? I'm completely on board with you with the idea that like the Rockefeller Foundation, and WF and all this plan things. And when they plan against the interest of the working class. Sold on that. Like, I'm absolutely on board with you. But the idea that they actively created the pandemic and actively did it on purpose, I find a little bit difficult to buy. I'm going to need to see some really hard evidence on that. Like, I'm going to need to see like very credible research on that topic in order to have me buy into this idea that the Rockefeller Foundation. It's weird that they did a pandemic scenario a year before the whole COVID thing happened. It does seem a bit timely, but it pays to remember that there had been lots of events that had occurred throughout the Asian countries. Like SARS was one. SARS was one where people were like, this could come over. Like, this could come over. We had been largely protected by the fact that there's an ocean in the way from things like SARS, Ebola. There's one I'm missing. But so I don't think it's as strange as you think it is. That like SARS had just happened, that there were pandemics that had occurred throughout Asia, and now that and COVID just happened to be the one that crossed over, right? And we basically, our response to it was essentially, yeah, just let it kill everybody. That's fine. Didn't capitalism lift millions out of poverty when feudalism was destroyed? No. Like, no. Capitalism definitely enriched a small group of landholders who wrote a bunch of laws to secure their wealth for themselves. But like, when feudalism was collapsing, they were literally going around rounding up black people and like wiping out indigenous populations. Like, you want to go back to that period of time? Okay. Well, what capitalism was doing was clear-cutting, like, the reason why England became the empire is because it clear-cut the island. They literally clear-cut their island and used all the lumber for boats. And went around, went to the African continent, rounded up a bunch of black people, erected a slave trade system there, and then came to North America and created a straight-up indigenous genocide. Like, what the Spanish did to South America makes what happened in North America look like baby's first genocide attempt. Like, the destruction of the Incan, the Aztec, the Mayan people was ruthless. Was just insane what happened in South America and what the Spanish did to South America. Like, literally, civilizations that had built pyramids, that had enormous functioning societies, wiped off the face of the planet, literally extinct. Great. Like, whatever justification you want to create for our genocide, dude, that's all you're doing there. But like, like we were a pox on this continent, and the idea that we lifted people out of poverty, well, there's a very specific group of people who benefited from that. And the people who benefited from that were exclusively white British people, right? Because we purged the society of the indigenous population, enslaved the black population, sold them to the white population, to specifically British men, and then basically allowed British men to settle for essentially free. It's the Homesteaders Act. It's the largest government handout in the history of the nation. Nobody talks about it. The Canadian Dominion Act, right? So a bunch of white British men settle the continent, take it over, and now their prodigy, right? Their kids, people like Jordan Peterson, get to stand up and say, bootstrap yourself and government handouts are bad, even though they're the beneficiaries of the largest government handout in the history of the nation. It's not even close. Communism didn't lift people out of poverty. I don't know what to tell you about Vine. Open your eyes. Just open your eyes. Like, you're looking at Chongqing right here. My school has a system where you move at your own pace. It kind of relates to capitalism because you're motivated to move ahead and finish school early and have more privileges. Well, that's kind of odd. Nations under communism, Russia prospered after they broke away when it collapsed, blah, blah, blah. Usual CIA talking points. The poverty rates in Western Europe are 21%. During feudalism, it was 97%. Yeah, like, but the improving of the civil society happens in spite of capitalism, not because of it. Like, I think that's the thing to say, right? Like, if you take a look at FDR, right, the New Deal, I think this is a great example, right? Like, the advancements that occur and the improvement of the society doesn't occur because there's an oligarchy that owns everything and they're distributing resources rationally. It happens because people fight back against it, and there's big protest movements, and there's big struggles against it, and like, I guess if you just discount World War II, bro, like, it's kind of an odd thing that happens when I talk to capitalists. It's like World War II didn't happen, right? That they just talk about World War, like, it doesn't exist. Like, World War II is an enormous capitalist catastrophe. It's the most dangerous and psychotic war that has happened in human history. It was fought by capitalists against capitalists. Hitler and Mussolini were capitalists working in industrial capitalism. Like, you're talking about how capitalism improved. Do you think World War II improved the lives of the European citizens? Do you think the Europeans had a good time with World War II? I fucking don't. And I think it's really weird. I think it's really fucking weird that you guys are coming in here trying to talk about Europe and European history, the Berlin Wall and all this, as if World War II didn't fucking happen. It didn't fucking happen. Wasn't the Soviet Union back when it was communist? Yeah. Like, they didn't want to fight that war, bro. They were fighting a defensive war. Like, and they won, by the way. Another win for communism. Look at the rest of the world who lost their standards of living due to capitalism. Oh, Europe is out of poverty, but of our 3 billion people get thrown into poverty and are exploited. Yeah, Santora's raising a really interesting point. Like, the method that capitalism uses to improve the quality of life for white citizens, typically, is by going to other countries and stealing their resources, right? So while you're sitting there saying, like, well, my society's doing great. Capitalism's super good. We're making all the wealth and the money. Look how well we're doing. Capitalism is super good. There's literally a guy on the other end of that chain whipping a Chinese child to get into a cobalt mine, right? Like, that if your view is narrowed down to literally just your street, and that's all you care about, then yeah, you can pretend that capitalism is great. But when you actually, like, take a look at the products you're consuming and taking a look at how those things came into being and how they exist, right? You're essentially looking at a dark history of slavery. That, like, capitalism is exploiting, currently is exploiting the African continent, the Middle East, has intentions to go to war with China, has intentions to go to war with Russia. Like, and not to mention the years and years of exploitation of South America, right? Like, Pinochet existed. Pinochet was real, right? Like, I don't know what it is with you capitalists where you just tend to forget people like Hitler, Mussolini, and Pinochet. And you just, like, and you also do this really fucked up thing where you take people who were straight up walking around saying we should purge the Jews, that we should get rid of the subspecies, and comparing them to people like Stalin and saying that they have an equivalency. Like, it's crazy to me that you guys do this. Like, it's really dark. Like, it's really, really fucking dark what you do. That, like, Stalin wasn't walking around saying, hey, we should purge the Jews. Like, Lenin wasn't walking around saying, hey, we should purge the Jew. That's your capitalists that do that, right? That's your guy. Capitalism isn't just the USA. Yeah, like the European nations don't do this. Like France doesn't have colonies all the way through Africa, right? Right? Like Spain doesn't have influence. Come on, bro. Like, come on, bro. Like, it's I don't know why. Like, there are very significant world events that have happened that you are just straight up ignoring. Like World War II. Large. I don't know. Like, I guess I'd be a capitalist too if I ignored World War II and ignored major world events, right? What about Eastern Europe that are capitalists today? I mean, you're looking at what, like Poland, like Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, right? Places that were largely destroyed. Like, dude, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, if you live in a country that was completely destroyed and reduced to rubble, then any improvement and any system is going to be better than that. Like, I don't know what to tell you, man. Get out of here with this, fantastic. Soviets starved millions of people. Shut up. Even the USA thinks that that's stupid. Even the CIA thinks that's stupid. Like, it's so stupid, dude. Soviets were Jewish. Okay. Bye-bye. Have a good one, Cotton. Good to see you, bud. Good to see you. Your point can easily be debunked. Good start, dude. Good start. Very serious. Something an adult would definitely say. look at the amount of capitalist nations to... Dude, that's so stupid. Dude, that's so stupid. Because there isn't such a thing as the CIA, because the American military doesn't exist, right? Because they don't go to countries like Libya and like they in 2011 the Americans went to Libya, which was the most successful economy on the African continent, right? Being run by Gaddafi, who is a socialist openly, who is socializing his country to great success, and destroyed it. The Americans destroyed it. NATO destroyed it to the degree where there are open slave markets now in Libya. Like, that's really fucking stupid, bro. Like, so stupid that you gotta stop talking. Like, it is time to start listening to people who know more than you do. Like, it really is, bro. Like, it really is. It's time for you to cease participating through speech and begin participating with listening. Because if you are walking around saying things that are that dumb and expecting to be taken seriously as an adult, you are going to experience real and genuine heartache in your life. You need to cease talking. You need to. Your life will improve dramatically. Wow, you're doubling down, bro. You're doubling down. I can't believe it. Like, I can't believe it. Yeah, the amount of communist countries are China. Do you know what happened to Laos, North Korea, and Vietnam, bro? Do you not know what happened during the McCarthy period? Like, do you not know about McCarthyism? Do you not know about that? Sounds to me like you don't. It sounds to me like you just don't understand what the CIA, what Joe McCarthy, what the American government did to communist nations, right? You know how you stop the spread of communism? You bomb the shit out of places. You just don't know about the Vietnam War? You just don't know about it? Like, bud, I have encountered a lot of dumb shit in my life. This is like the height of dumb shit, what you're trying to say right now. That the reason why capitalism is better is because there's more capitalist nations and there are less communist nations. As if the Americans and the Europeans did not wage open war against communism and against the communist people. North Korea's people. You don't know anything about North Korea. You're illiterate, obviously. Like, obviously, bro. Like, really, seriously, bro. Like, you are illiterate in a deep and serious way. Stop participating. I came from TikTok. That chat's just disrespectful to another level. Yeah, Smurf feet, bud. I feel you, bud. I hope you're here to participate in a beautiful way, bud. I hope you don't just ask, like, what example of communism is successful? Like, I feel like I answer that question like 15 times a day. I need to come up with a... what do you know about North Korea? Enlighten me. Here's North Korea. America waged a war against North Korea and reduced it to rubble. Rubble. Literally the entire place was gravel. Not a standing structure, which was the goal of the United States empire, to destroy it. We did so successfully. Go watch MASH. Like, literally, I don't need to fucking give you a dry academic... Like, literally watch a television show that was produced in America. It's very popular, called MASH, for fuck's sake. We reduced this place to rubble. Destroyed it completely. The fact that North Korea has standing structures today is an economic miracle, and it happened because of communist and Marxist ideas. Like, for fuck's sake, my man. You do not know what happened in North Korea. It's unbelievable. North Korea also did the same to South Korea. Bro... Fucking... Read a fucking book, dude. Like, read a fucking book. Dude. Like, that's too stupid. Like, really, that's too stupid. Oof. Just the idea that there's people walking around, like, in the world that are genuinely that stupid. Like, that's absolutely stupid. No, the same thing happened in South Korea? No, it didn't. Like, fucking no, it didn't. Like, North Korea did not level South Korea to the ground and turn it into gravel. Like, with what? With what? How did they manage that? Come on, bud. Like, come on. Both sides, yeah. Oh, so we're doing a both sides thing now, right? As if the whole thing wasn't happening because of American imperialism, right? Like, I just don't know why we ignore this. Like, why are we supposed to ignore the fact that the Americans literally, like what do you think is going on? Like, what do you think is happening in the world? Do you just think that the United States imperial machine doesn't exist? Like, how many wars do they actually need to embark on until you put together that this is how they've always acted, this is what they've always done? Casually ignores the genocide committed by North Korea and China. Yeah, hashtag proof. Like, evidence, please. The CIA claiming it isn't evidence. Like, I'm done with TikTok. Yeah, Smurf feet, bud. Like, I think that TikTok, it's just like a churning, it's just a churning sea and a churning tide of humanity, right? Like, it's just an absolutely ridiculous. The Eastern Bloc was imperialist. You ignore all that. Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, Jesus Christ. We're almost at the end of the stream, dude. I'm just getting like, it's just like this insistent tide of ignorance. Just this demand that we must be illiterate, that we cannot read anything about the countries we destroy. Like, we refuse to actually read anything about the countries we destroy, and whatever the CIA says goes. Like, that's basically what I've been experiencing. Smurf feet, I'm definitely going to talk to you, bud, because you seem to have a good head on your shoulders, and you're interacting with me in a way that I like. What's my take on the issues in Iran? The history of Iran's really fascinating, and it's miraculous that they exist at all, frankly. That it's so clear that it's so clear. Mr. Cheese Monkey, I'm gonna talk to you in a minute, okay? But I like your question. I appreciate you, and I love your name, Mr. Cheese Monkey. Really nice. It's a miracle that Iran didn't collapse during the American invasions, right? That 2001, the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan, right? Literally just destroy these places. The CIA literally funds like kill squads. I love this. Like, these defenders of capitalism in the chat. CIA kill squads. Afghanistan. Come on. Intercept. Like, literally the CIA is walking around Afghanistan just, like, killing children in the streets, right? The Intercept reported on it. Why? Really easy to find. Really easy to find. This Ronnie McNutt stuff, dude, disgraceful. The reason why I ban people like you is because you're a disgraceful person. Become a person. Grow up. Absolutely disgraceful. Ronnie McNutt was a human being. He deserves respect. You're just turning him into a fucking meme. Just gross. Just absolutely fucking despicable. I don't need to hear anything from you. I don't need to hear anything from you. You're a disgraceful, despicable human being who needs to grow up. Get the fuck out of here. Ugh. Okay, we're talking about Iran. Smurf feet. We're talking about Iran. And so during that period of time, right, CIA's got death squads going throughout Afghanistan, killing children. Iraq is basically completely dismantled. the stealing of the oil that's happening all through this period of time. You've got the Yemeni genocide happening, right? The Egyptian Arab Spring happens over this period of time. And Iran's response to this chaos, and it's complete and total chaos, Iran's response is to become very insular and protectionist. It needs to protect itself from American culture, and it needs to protect itself from the American military. So that means that the people who must be in power, if Iran is to survive, must be highly militant and highly protectionist of Iranian culture. That's theocrats. That's the theocracy. That's straight up just the theocracy. And so you have this theocracy that takes hold in Iran. The Iranian citizens are not happy about it, but they understand it. That they don't like that they're being ruled by the theocrats, but they understand that it's being done for the existential survival of Iran. And especially because during this period of time, Saudi Arabia is allies with the United States, and Iran and Saudi Arabia have a long history of conflict with one another. Saudi Arabia wants Iran to fall, because if Iran falls, then Saudi Arabia is the strongest power in the region, right? And Saudi Arabia are Machiavellian evil geniuses. They are the smartest people on the planet when it comes to political maneuvering. Absolutely. And it's not close. Like, I really respect the Chinese and how they politically maneuver and the decisions that they make. But Saudi Arabia, it really understands power. It understands how to use power. It sees where the wind is blowing and it moves in that direction. They're evil, don't get me wrong, but they're Machiavellian geniuses. Like, they really understand power. Benito, bringing it down to where things really matter, bud. Saudi Arabia also has a hell of a goalkeeper. I knew that's the reason I didn't ban you, Benito. I knew you were going to start saying shit like that. I knew it. I could tell. That's funny, man. That's really funny. Okay. Okay. So now the Americans are starting to leave the region because they're trying to do wars elsewhere, right? You got the Ukraine conflict. They're openly pounding the drum about war with China. They're building nuclear submarines in the South China Sea. They've pulled out of Afghanistan publicly. Of course, there's still private mercenary groups and all that in Afghanistan. Like, they're never going to actually leave Afghanistan. But they have pulled a lot of resources out of Afghanistan. The Taliban took Afghanistan over immediately. Remember when that happened? And eventually, they are going to pull out of Iraq. It is going to happen eventually. And so the citizens of Iran are looking at their theocratic government that they never liked in the first place, and are basically like, okay, it's time to get rid of you. It's time to put you back in the corner, right? It's time to take the dog and put him back in the corner, especially as the dog tries to assert itself even more on the population. Seems like there's a big feminist upswell that's happening in Iran, right? Which makes sense, because the theocracy is fairly anti-woman, right? Women are property, historically. And so women are standing up and saying, fuck that shit, and the populace is getting behind them and fighting back. The theocrats, of course, don't want to give up power. Normal, right? Normal kind of shit. And so while all that is happening, there is an expectation of a CIA color revolution, right? These are exactly the types of moments that that the CIA will use in order to insert themselves and foment a coup. So it's an ongoing crisis that is unfolding, and yeah, all eyes on Iran. You know, there's a lot of players, there's a lot happening, and we don't know how it's going to shake out. And that's really the truth. We don't know how it's going to shake out. That maybe the United States is going to use this as a moment to really try to get in there and break Iran apart. That's always been the goal, is to get into Iran and destroy it. Because the destruction of Iran would be really, really good for the American imperial agenda. This is when we start talking about the Belt and Road Initiative. If you guys don't know about the Belt and Road Initiative, then you should. The Belt and Road Initiative is the thing that's happening in geopolitics. This is an old map. I need to find a better map. But what the Belt and Road Initiative is it's a series of high-speed rails that come out of China, connect into Russia. You can see that it goes through Moscow into Minsk, which is Belarus, and then into Warsaw, right? There's a big reason why this war gets fomented by the Americans in Ukraine, and it's to disrupt this. It's to disrupt the Belt and Road Initiative. It's to try to make it, I mean, that's part of it. There's a lot of reasons why that happened, but that's part of it. They want to make sure that Moscow can't get goods from China into Minsk, into Warsaw, and then the rest of Europe. That's what it's about. And so you can see if we look at Iran in this, that the rail has connected Iran already. And now that China is working with Afghanistan, they want to get a rail through Afghanistan into Tehran to really solid this up, because you can see it's a bit of a loop-de-doo. They've had to get around a lot of international borders to do this. And but they're connecting this rail all the way through the continent. And if the United States could disrupt Iran and break Iran apart, that would mean that this planned rail, you can see this sort of faded pink, right, to get into Turkey and then to get into Europe through a second route. If they can disrupt this, then that disrupts a huge, huge plan. That my dog's asleep right now, guys. I'm not going to get my dog, okay? I'm not going to disrupt him. So so Iran is... and Iran is absolutely crucial, because the ultimate goal of the Belt and Road Initiative, well, I shouldn't say the ultimate goal, but one of the major goals is to get from Tehran into a new city that the Saudis are building called Neom. They're building it right here, and they want to get the rail either through a newly liberated Iraq or perhaps even through this waterway. That they will build this rail underneath water if they have to, which sort of explains the plans for these rails, right? So they'll get the rail under the water, get it into Neom, and then get it into Egypt, where the Suez Canal is. And they have to go under the waterway here because of Israel, right? If you actually take a look at a map proper, Israel makes it so that they can never get into the continent of Africa, right? Enormous population, enormous development opportunities to happen throughout the African continent. And so the plan is to get the rail into Saudi Arabia and then underneath the Gulf of Aqaba and then into the Suez Canal. And then, as you can see, they've already got rails happening. But that way, Africa will be connected to China by land. By land, which is enormous. That's a game changer. It's a game changer for China. It's a game changer for Africa. And what it ultimately means for the United States is that the vast majority of the world's population will be connected by a high-speed rail by land, leaving the United States to collapse into the fucking shithole it's going to become. Population of 300 million, who gives a fuck? China alone has 1.6 billion people. India has 1.4 billion people. The African continent. I don't even know offhand. How many people live in Africa? How many people live in Africa? Yeah, 1.2 billion people. Right? Like, these people are not going to give a shit what America thinks or says, except through the force of fighting. The threat of force. Benito, 1.6 billion people still can't produce 11 decent players. Fuck. That's undeniable. Undeniable, Benito. I mean, to be fair, it is a Western game. So, just to be completely fair. But you're not wrong. Like, you're not wrong, Benito. Oh. Penguins are being imperial to seals. Thank you, Super Cookie the Man. Thank you, bud. What was my opinion on the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan? I mean, that's post-Stalin, and so it shows you the lack of the quality of the leadership. Like, the Afghanistan invasion was stupid, and there's a lot of different, like, I don't 100% understand I'm not yet convinced that the reasons the West say the Soviets invaded are the same reasons that the Soviets said, and I don't know enough about it. But I will say this, that the quality of the leadership post-Stalin declines, obviously. Khrushchev and Gorbachev and Yeltsin and all these guys, even according to international commentators, according to the Chinese, according to Deng at that time, he thought these guys were stupid, right? He straight up, he said that they were stupid. Deng, I think it was Deng. Deng said of Stalin that he did 70% correct, 30% wrong. And then he was asked, well, what do you think about Khrushchev? And he said, Khrushchev's is stupid. And I think that's pretty accurate. Like, the true failing, like if you really want to ask me, like, why did the Soviet Union collapse and get a really serious answer, the serious answer is because they failed to build institutions to pass the baton down to the next generation successfully. That was the true failing of the Soviet Union. That if you are going to have this long-scale, multi-generational project, that's what communism is. It's a long-scale, multi-generational project that requires a generation to successfully pass its ethos and its thinking and its planning on to the next generation. Then you need institutions that are designed to do that. And the Soviets failed at that. For sure. That's completely undeniable. And I don't think that I would attempt to do that. But what I will say in defense of the communists and the Soviets at that time is that they literally were the first people trying it. And so to expect it to be 100% successful, I think that by itself is a bit foolish. That of course they were going to experience hiccups, and of course they were going to experience difficulty. But the Soviet experiment inspires many of the Chinese experiments and much of what the Chinese are doing now. And so the passing of the baton, while it might not have happened throughout Russia, it happened from Russia into China. And of course you have the Sino-Soviet split and all that kind of stuff, and on it goes. But the passing of the baton from Mao to Deng to Xi shows that the Chinese system, the Chinese institution, the National People's Congress, is more successful at passing the baton intergenerationally and being able to make plans to accept certain things are going to go badly in some regards and we'll fix them later. So, for example, in Deng's case, Deng understood that allowing international trade into the borders of China and allowing capitalists to come in and allowing finance capital in was going to create inequalities. They knew this, and he said famously, let's let some people get rich first. But he also knew, and so through that statement, he reveals that the plan is to let them get that capital in, let them send us their manufacturing, let them send them this, let's learn how to do this stuff, let's industrialize, let's financialize, let's get in and take the successes, and then even it out later. And you can see that evening out happening with Xi Jinping now. So Mao successfully wins the war, right? Which is huge already, right? Huge already, wins the war. And then successfully, through the Great Leap Forward, industrializes the country, right? And then after that industrialization happens, they pass it over to Deng. And Deng takes it and says, okay, we've industrialized, we've created this foundation. Mao successfully created this foundation. And so now it's up to us to move on to the next level and join the international community and interact with the international community, which includes capitalists. That if you're going to trade peacefully with the rest of the world, then you need to understand how international capital works. And that was what Deng successfully did. And then Deng passed the baton to Xi Jinping. And there are intermediary leaders within there. It's not like those three guys were the only guys. But and Xi Jinping comes into power as an anti-corruption leader. He smooths out a lot. Well, he is in the process of smoothing out a lot of inequalities that exist within China, but most resoundingly, his largest success for sure is de-corrupting the National People's Congress itself, because the Chinese view capitalists and capitalism as corruption. That here in the United States we've legalized corruption, right? You can legally bribe whatever politician you want, and it's not considered corruption. So corruption is part of the American system. The Chinese view that as corruption, and they literally imprison people and execute people for it. And it's been largely successful. So the ruling class of China is not the business class. Whenever Westerners report on China, they report as if the business class and the capitalist class is the ruling class of China, when that's not the case. The ruling class of China is the National People's Congress, and the leader is Xi Jinping. And they got to that place because they learned lessons from the Soviet Union. They learned that we need to actually have institutional structural power. And I actually think that they were better equipped to do this because China's a 4,000-year-old civilization. Like, it has experience with itself. That it has this long lineage of collapse and rebuild and collapse and rebuild. So and the people who are experiencing it are willing to go along this journey and are willing to participate in this collective pursuit, right? It's something that I would never expect to see in North America. We don't have this ethos, and we don't really understand China. Like, we don't really understand China. Anyway, bit of a divergence, but I love talking about China. It's imagine collapsing because somebody hated Gorbachev's reforms. Again, like, the Soviet Union didn't really collapse. Like, it was done fairly systemically. Like, it was done systematically. Like, I am more or less of the opinion that the post-Stalinist leadership wanted to integrate itself into Europe and the European system. And that ends with Putin. So I view it like we called it a collapse because it was important for us to call it a collapse so that we could be like, we won the Cold War. Yeah, hurrah, we won this Cold War that is kind of a fabrication of propaganda system, right? Like, what is a Cold War? And so but ultimately I think it's just the Russian leadership being like, okay, these communist state-run systems we're going to privatize, and we're going to join the system of neoliberal capital, and we're going to integrate into those systems because we view that as a way to peacefully integrate ourselves with the West, and that gives us a better position as Russians, and it safeguards us, right? Like, if Hitler returns to Germany, right, he might not invade us if we're integrated into the international systems. So in a way, it's a type of protectionist thinking that I can respect. I don't necessarily agree with it, obviously, for obvious reasons, but it's what happened. So, do you believe Scandinavia is a socialist paradise? No. I mean, I think they've done slightly better than us, right? But the reason why the capitalist class gave the concessions that they did to the Scandinavian countries is because of the looming threat of communism, right? The communists were coming and trundling forward and seizing the means of production and getting rid of capitalists, turning capitalist enterprise into state-run enterprise. And the people of Scandinavia are like, yeah, maybe we should do that. And so the capitalists went, no, don't do that. No, don't do that. We'll give you extra time off. We'll give you health care. Yeah, you don't need to overthrow us. We're good. We're on your side. Ha 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 ha. And now they're in the process of regressing it, which is what capitalist countries do. The only reason capitalists will ever concede anything is if there's a threat to their power. And the Soviet Union was a significant threat to the Scandinavian nations. And so there was a lot of concession that happened amongst the capitalist class. And now that threat is gone. And so you can expect it all to regress. And eventually Norway, Sweden, and Finland will look like Canada and the United States, just a libertarian, privatized shithole. China executed a few billionaires. Yeah. Tiananmen Square. I mean, I don't care to get into the Tiananmen Square thing. Like, talking to you guys is like talking to just somebody who's read the CIA side of the argument. Like, there's plenty of conversation. Like, everybody knows about the tank man, right? That there's a man standing in front of a tank, and Westerners are like, "Oh, how horrible! That man's gonna get run over by the tank," and then they cut away. Well, if you continue watching the clip, like, the tank literally just sits there, and then some of his friends come over and grab him, and they leave, right? And there's plenty of evidence to show that, like, once again, we have a color revolution happening, right? That the CIA is using this period of genuine protest. Let's not pretend like there wasn't a genuine protest. But I've seen photographs of, like, dead Chinese police officers and protesters, color revolutionaries, attempting to murder people and seize power. Like, these are complex moments that are very rarely as black and white as you think they are. And I really, really beseech you. I'm really trying. If you get anything from a guy like me, really start to accept that everything you're reading and everything you're looking at is coming out of the CIA. Like, if you're reading CNN, if you're listening to Fox, if you're watching what's called mainstream media, right? These people are part of the CIA intelligence apparatus. Like, and to pretend like that's not happening, I think is lunacy. It's absolute lunacy. And what they do, and they do it all the time, is that they just state things. They just state things as true and move on, right? And Goebbels said, right? You just say a big lie long enough and loud enough, and people will believe it. And that's what our propaganda system does in many cases. They just ubiquitously state things as true. And they don't need to back them up with evidence. They don't need to produce a story. They just say it, right? They just say it. And then it becomes true. And then if somebody stands up and says, "Hey, can I get evidence for that? Can somebody actually show me the event or tell me a story about that event using evidence and facts that I can source and look at?" Right? Then you get called a kook and a conspiracy theorist, or a Putin apologist. Russian propaganda was a big one when you talk about Ukraine, right? And you can't actually have a genuine conversation on those terms. You can't actually have a genuine conversation with somebody who implicitly believes something because they were told it was true without evidence. Like, you can't really have a debate. Like, you can't really have a conversation because this is the way it goes. China killed 100 million people during Mao's Great Leap Forward. Cool. Can I see evidence of it? You stupid idiot. And that's basically the conversation. I don't accept that. I would like evidence. And at this point, I feel like I've got all the reason in the world to ask for evidence. Like, how many invasions and coups and destructions do you need to see? Like, really? Like, even if you're sitting there thinking that I'm a kooky, crazy idiot, even if you're sitting there thinking that I'm some loser, right? If how many times do you actually need to see the United States literally destroy countries? Literally destroy countries before you start thinking to yourself, maybe my government is not acting rationally. Maybe my government is not acting in the best interests. Maybe the government that overthrows Chile, Bolivia, Peru, Colombia, Brazil, Paraguay, right? Chad, Nigeria, the people's the Congo, right? Literally invades Iraq, Afghanistan, foments coups in Yugoslavia, Libya, the greatest catastrophe of the 2000s for sure. Like, maybe we shouldn't just uncritically believe what they say, right? Like, and that's basically all I'm telling you to do, right? Stop uncritically believing what these people have to say, because when you do, you're just doing yourself a disservice. The CIA is the largest terrorist organization on the planet, and they're extremely well funded. They're extremely well funded, and they're never audited. They're also never audited, right? That's right, Milo. That's right. Well, Benito, I'm here to change hearts and minds. So, hopefully, you and I can come to more of an accord with one another. All right, guys. We've reached the end of this one. Wow, I don't know what happened to the TikTok chat. I'm down to 16 people. Unbelievable. Oh well, such is life. Always remember, guys, each and every one of you is a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it, and you'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Revolt. Rebel. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.